by Vice Mayor Jones. I see Councilmember Becker has his hand raised. Go ahead, Councilmember Becker.
Thank you. So I wasn't here. I'm actually filling in for Councilmember Watanabe. Am I allowed to vote on this, or do I have to abstain?
You can vote on it if you feel comfortable doing so, if you have reviewed the minutes.
Okay, just want to make sure I can. Thank you.
And Los Gatos is here.
Thanks, Mayor Rennie. Auden will note that. Mayor Paul.
Yeah, I apologize for the order of this, Chair. I just want to let you know that I'm logging in twice. I have really poor connection in my office right now, so I just let you know in case you're wondering whether two of my video feeds here. Thanks.
Thank you, Darcy. Okay, I don't see any more hands. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? I don't see any hands raised, Auden, and so with that, let's call roll on the minutes.
All right, I will call the roll. Flagger.
Yes.
Flagger, aye. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Walia.
Aye.
Walia, aye. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, aye. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Burt.
Yes.
Burt, aye. Becker.
Aye.
Becker, aye. Mock.
Aye.
Mock, aye. Little Munoz.
Aye.
Little Munoz, aye. Montano.
Aye.
Montano, aye. And Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, aye. And did any of those that were previously absent join? All right.
Not that,
With 12.
not that I've
Not that you have seen. Chair
only
Flagg.
Mayor Rennie joined after you did the first roll call.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then with 12 ayes and 3 absences, the motion carries.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is our first action item of the evening, which is Assembly Bill 2164. And it's our own local Assembly member Alex Lee's bill, and also supported out of Vice Mayor Jones's office in San Jose. And I see we have the presenter for this item, Zane Barnes. And so I'm going to do the order a little bit differently this evening. I will have Zane and anybody else from his team present. Then I'll actually go to public comment, and then I'll bring it back to the committee for question and discussion. And then it is an action item where a member could make a motion and recommendation to the full board on Assembly Member Bill 2164. And so Zane, are you there? There you are. So I'll turn it over to you, Zane. Thank you so much for joining us. And Zane, for those of you who don't know, he is with the city of San Jose.
Thank you very much. My name is Zane Barnes, and I'm the Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Relations with the City of San Jose. It's my pleasure to present information on AB 2164 and ask the Cities Association for a recommendation. I'm also joined by Vanessa Gonzalez from Cruise Strategies, one of our consultants in Sacramento, and Allison Lim and Maria Monchal from Assembly Member Lee's office. In response to the City of San Jose's Rules Committee directive on December 8th, 2021, the city explored legislative and policy options to increase small business ADA compliance. The directive specifically asked city staff to advocate for maintaining state-mandated city-collected fees to support compliance activities. Separately, council members expressed concern about constraints that prevent using these funds for a broader range of ADA compliance activities. Working with the cross-functional city team, a proposal was drafted that pairs continued fee collection with expanded grant opportunities for small businesses, a potential win-win for our residents with disabilities, but also our small businesses. Quite simply, AB 2164 will increase compliance with accessibility laws by allowing small businesses to access public funds to make accessibility-related improvements. In practice, this fee is already being collected by cities across the state of California to fund the Disability Access and Education Revolving Fund. Local governments currently collect a $4 fee that will drop to a $1 fee after December 31st, 2023. This bill keeps the fee at $4 and allows this revenue to be used by local governments to provide financial assistance for small businesses to fund accessibility-related certification, design, construction, and permitting fees. The bill has already achieved widespread support from municipalities across the state, as well as disability groups, including the California Chamber of Commerce, Disability Rights Council, the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce, the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Fremont and Gilroy Chambers of Commerce. These support letters can be found in the agenda packet as well. The bill was passed out of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, is now in the appropriations process. As you know, the Appropriations Committee analyzes the fiscal impact of the bill to the state, and we've been working closely with the relevant state entities, including the Division of the State Architect and the California Commission on Disability Access, on amendments that virtually eliminate any cost to the state. While we're feeling confident about AB 2164 will make it out of the Appropriations Committee, additional support from the Cities Association and other municipalities will help build a stronger case on the need for the bill and ensure that AB 2164 is successful through the entire legislative process and ultimately makes it across the finish line and is signed by the governor. With that, we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Zane. Is anybody else from your team presenting, or is that it for now?
That's it now. We're available for questions. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And as I said, I wanted to go to public comment. Vice Mayor Jones, I see you have your hand raised. Do you need to ask a question or make a comment? Because I wanted to go to the public first, so that we could have the committee have a good discussion.
Yes, go ahead and go to the public first, and I'll wait.
Thank you. And so Auden and attendees, if you would like to make a comment, please go ahead and raise your hand.
Our first speaker is Kim Mosley, and you will be unmuted. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
And Kim Mosley is the president of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Kim. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mayor Flagger. I just wanted to take a moment to speak with you this evening. I'm sure that you're all familiar with the challenges that we've had in regard to the accessibility and nefarious lawsuits that have really been difficult for our small business community, especially during the time of pandemic. So I just wanted to, reiterate our support for AB 2164, and then also wanted to ask Zane as well, and to you, Councilmember Flagger, if Bill AB 2829 is also on your radar, which would allow this Certified Access Specialist program to offer $3,000 grants through the state as well. So I just wanted to I guess, bring that to your attention if it's not already. It's been such a challenge, of course, during the pandemic times for our small businesses. And when you layer the high cost of overhead, especially in communities like ours, where the rent be up to $25,000 even for a location per month, a lack of income due to COVID restrictions, just really trying to kind of repay debt and get businesses back on their feet. A lawsuit like this can really put you in a precarious predicament. So we would ask for your support. Getting this type of certification really helps each of our businesses to be in compliance with the law and provide accessibility, which is what we all want. So I thank you for your time and your support of our small business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
We have no more speakers from the public.
Thanks, Auden. So I'll bring it back to the committee, and Zane, I'll have the vice mayor start. And again, committee members, now is the time for questions or comments. And so I'll start with Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. As a lot of you know in your cities that these ADA lawsuits are really hammering our small businesses, our minority-owned businesses and ethnically owned businesses, where, once those lawsuits hit, they're facing, expenses of, $10,000, $20,000 in legal fees. And it's literally driving some of our small businesses out of business. This fund is already in existence. we want to continue it, but we also want to expand it because it's a win-win. It offers the ability for a small business to be able to comply with the laws. It also creates access to their customers. So, this is one of those bills where, it's hard for me to imagine why anybody would not want to support it. And I know that in this committee, oftentimes there's a hesitation to vote for something unless your council has already approved it or voted for it. But this is one of those where I guarantee you that each and every city here that's represented would support something like this, because again, it's a win-win for our disabled community and it's a win-win for our small businesses. So that's why I wanted to say, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Chappie. Councilmember Gibbons.
Thank you. Some questions first. I'm not quite clear. You're saying that there's already a $4 fee from all businesses that goes into a special account for ADA compliance? And where does that money sit now and how is it used now?
Sure. So as I understand, and Vanessa, please correct me if I'm wrong here, is this this fund is actually being used to assist with ADA compliance, and it's a revolving fund. This would just allow small businesses or municipalities to collect this remaining fee in order to provide financial assistance to small businesses within their municipalities.
So sorry, I'm still not clear. There's already a $4 fee being collected. Every city collects it from every business license.
Yes.
And money goes to every city.
Yes.
The city
The
has.
city of Campbell should have a pot of money somewhere with these fees that were collected.
Yeah, as the phrase goes, news to me.
Well, it was always good news though when you find out that you might have more money than you thought you had.
This is true. Thank you. Okay, and then it was intended currently to be used to buy grant application, help people make improvements to comply with ADA, but not pay their legal fees if they've already been attacked.
So my understanding is it wasn't designed to pay their legal fees, as well as it wasn't designed to provide grants for them to make improvements to their physical space. It was to provide technical assistance primarily and to support them that way.
Okay.
So that's why we want to expand the scope of what we can do to support those
which makes good sense. I think that's an important clarification when presenting what this is going to accomplish. There already is a CASP program, which is states license individuals to do inspections. So it's not clear to me when you were saying that through this program, people would be certified, their space would be certified. What exactly did you mean is the end result? And who would do that? Since there already is a CASP program, are you talking about using this money to have certified CASP representatives go around to all the businesses? Or what is your thought of how to implement? I'm a little open.
So you're spot on, Liz. So yes, currently you can use that money for the CASP consultant to come in and analyze your physical space and make recommendations. And then also as the business, makes those adjustments, modifications or whatever, then they would certify them. So that's already there. So the idea is to expand that and beyond just an inspection, but also provide financial resources to modify or make changes to the physical space.
Okay, that's helpful clarifications. Thanks. I would just offer that the state has done legislation to specifically address these superfluous lawsuits. The problem is now that instead of using the state disability laws, they use the federal, and
yes,
to be used, that needs to be made at the federal level, which is more complicated, but it is a federal level problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Gibbons. Mayor Elahi.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds Interesting. I guess, is the $4 being collected from the business license, or how is that paid from by the business? Is that $4 per year, or?
It's $4 that's collected off of the business license.
Okay, so renew.
Every year, if you renew your business license every year, it would be $4 per year.
So far it's been used more for inspection and maybe enforcement.
Not enforcement.
Or is there any money left over with the $4 to give anybody any grants?
Yeah, I can only speak for San Jose. It was almost a situation where, like Liz described, where we didn't even know that we had this pot of money. I think we found out it was about $800,000 that had been collected in this fund that we weren't even aware of. So now we're in the process of, moving forward in terms of utilizing that funding, but we have the barriers in terms of how we can use it and how we can support the small businesses. So just like San Jose and Campbell and every other city that issues business license, you've been collecting that money. There's a pot of money somewhere that is either being utilized or not being utilized.
I mean, it would be great if it's used to let the business know or have somebody inspect it and then help them get their ADA up to par before they get sued. So I don't know if this is going to give enough resources or not, but if that's the direction it's headed, then that's a good way to go.
Thanks, Mayor Elahi. And I'll pick up on that. So, a couple of things. One, I saw also in researching the bill that at one point it was $1 and it's reestablishing the $4. And part of the AB 2164 proposal is that it would allow a broader use of these funds. And so it's one, ensuring that cities are aware of it, but two, also understanding how the cities could use the funds. Zane, this question may be for you. Kim Mosley from Los Altos had asked about AB 2829, which I think is Assemblymember Lowe's bill. And my understanding is that's a CASP grant program. So two questions, one, are you also tracking this bill? And two, how do you reconcile the grant program with is the grant program separate and apart, and how those funds could be used from what AB 2164 is proposing?
Sure, I'm happy to start and then maybe kick to Vanessa for a little bit more. We are definitely tracking AB 2829 and currently going through our process internally and monitoring this as it develops. Vanessa, can you talk a little bit about the grant program?
Sure, thank you, Zane. Yeah, so from my understanding for AB 2164, the grant program would also cover CASP inspections, and Assemblymember Lowe's bill is very specific to a grant program just for the CASP inspections, whereas 2164 could also, the grant funding can be used for multiple purposes, not only the CASP inspection, but also construction related purposes as well. So businesses can upgrade their business to become compliant.
Very helpful. Thank you. And then my last question, and I don't see any more hands, is whether or not, and I know Vice Mayor Jones said, it's highly unlikely that there would be opposition for this bill, but I'm curious, have you seen any opposition or heard of any opposition? And I know, the legislative body is on a break right now. And so when they get back next week, it'll be full speed ahead. And maybe that's when we'll start seeing more opposition letters come in. But Zane or Vanessa, have you heard any potential opposition to this bill?
The only thing I'll add here is, and we have Maria and Allison from Assemblymember Lee's office on, who might be more intimately aware of any opposition that exists. So I'll just move it over to them.
Yeah, sure. So we don't have any registered opposition. We haven't heard from anyone who opposes at this point.
Thank you. So seeing no more hands, what I would look to...
Chair, I was going to make a motion to support AB 2164.
And I'll second.
And that's a motion to recommend to the full board to support AB 2164. Is that your motion, Vice Mayor?
That is correct.
So Auden, we have the motion by Vice Mayor and seconded by Councilmember Gibbons. I don't see any hands for discussion, so please go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Paul? Paul? Paul is,
Sorry, yes.
okay, Paul, I. Bert?
Yes.
Bert, I. Walia?
Aye.
Walia, I. Flagger?
I am abstaining. Individually, I do support AB 2164, but my council has not taken a position on this bill, and our practice is to first have our legislative subcommittee take a position before I can support or take any position on a bill. So I will be abstaining. And Auden, Alyssa, Councilmember Cisneros from Sunnyvale is on the attendee side, so she needs to be moved over.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will.
And may I interrupt and just say that there is a note in the chat from Vice Mayor Cisneros from Sunnyvale indicating that they are here.
Thank you. I have asked her to rejoin as panelist. So she should be coming soon.
It has worked. I am now a panelist. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And what is your vote?
My vote is abstain.
Okay. Jones?
Aye.
Jones, aye. Mock?
Aye.
Mock, aye. Gibbons?
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Rennie?
Aye.
Rennie, aye. Elahi?
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Lero Munoz?
Abstain.
Lero Munoz, abstain. Montano?
Aye.
Montano, aye. Kamei?
Yes.
Kamei, aye. And Becker?
Abstain. I support, but I abstain.
All right. Becker abstain with 10 ayes and 4 abstentions and 1 absence. The motion carries.
Thank you, Auden, and thanks everybody, and thank you, Zane, and the rest of the team for presenting and bringing this important bill to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is AB 1944, and this was on our agenda last month, and we're bringing it forward again for a couple of reasons. One, Assembly Member Lee had reached out just to emphasize how important it is to have, his own local cities association support the bill. And so I looked at what other associations and organizations have done when members, for example, have questions and they're not sure on whether or not to fully support a bill. And I noticed that the League of California Cities will take a support in concept position. And so I wanted to bring it back to this committee to consider supporting AB 1944 at a minimum in concept, if that's where committee members are. I know the last time, most committee members supported it, but then when we brought it to the board for different reasons, a lot of members weren't ready to support AB 1944. And just as a reminder, for those of you who are not familiar with AB 1944, it is one of the many bills that are making their way through Sacramento to modernize the Brown Act. And the main focus of this bill is to allow council members or any member of a Brown Act body, if they are participating remotely, they do not have to publish their private address. And if a jurisdiction chooses to do that, then they also have to allow the public to participate remotely. And I know last year with many things happening here in Santa Clara County, that was a big concern for many of us to have to publicly disclose our private addresses. So I think it is an important bill, and it focuses on an important area for a lot of our jurisdictions and members. Members of this committee, I am going to open it up for questions to see if there's any discussion. I know Assembly Member Lee wasn't able to make it, but there are 2 staff members here to answer any questions we may have. So I will look to see if there are any hands or questions related to AB 1944. While you're thinking of your questions and comments, Auden, let's see if we have any public comment.
I do not see any hands raised.
Thanks, Auden. So I'll bring it back to the committee. Mayor Elahi, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good bill. I think we shouldn't have to give our addresses. I know I had to do a meeting from Pakistan and put a sign outside one of my friend's house so that people could come in at 2 a.m. Pakistan time to attend the meeting. So that didn't make any sense. But on the other hand, we have a problem with some council members who may have 2 separate residences, and they may be doing all their meetings from outside the state. I'm wondering if there's some check on that, or is there some way that can be monitored? Because as much as you want to make it easy, you still want the council members to be generally residing in your district. So if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'm happy to
And
answer the question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I'm happy to.
Allison.
In terms of the current Brown Act already has provisions that would allow for that in terms of teleconferencing, as long as there is a quorum of members participating within the jurisdiction. So in this instance, we're not changing those requirements. In terms of checks on this, it is something where we do have a check in terms of there will be a majority vote of the body to adopt these provisions. So it is opt-in, it's not a mandatory requirement. And so the full body would have to decide that the majority of folks want to adopt these provisions. But with the existing Brown Act, if someone were to want to participate from outside of the jurisdiction, as long as there was a quorum within the jurisdiction, they would be able to do that. So under our bill, they would still be able to do that. We're not changing that aspect of the Brown Act.
Yeah, no, I got that part. My concern was if they never lived in your jurisdiction or they're constantly out of the state, we would not know where they're calling from and whether they're participating and still continue to represent their city. So I don't know how you figure that out, but under the current act, if you post your address, we know where they are. But if they don't have to post their address, we don't know where they are, and they may constantly be residing outside the state.
Yeah,
So
there are some logistics, like for example, there still has to be a quorum participating within the jurisdiction. So although these addresses may not be made open to the public, we would have to figure out some way of certifying the address that people are working from in order to ensure that a quorum could be met. And that could be with the city clerk or some of the city staff, but that would happen, and it would have to happen in order to meet quorum, but it just wouldn't be an address that's publicly noticed in the agenda.
Yeah, the quorum is not an issue. I mean, there will be a quorum because there's at least 4 out of the 5 still living in the jurisdiction. But if someone takes advantage and just never bothers showing up, and they're just zooming and never giving their address, and then that kind of opens it up for not full participation. So I don't know how you work around that, but I just wanted to raise that issue.
And Mayor Elahi, as you know, as we have done in the past, sometimes we do support with proposed amendments. And so if the committee is interested, if we craft a letter, we could definitely list areas or suggestions of improvement or amendments to the bill. And I jotted that down because I do think that is something worth clarifying. And Allison Ford made a key point about this proposed bill where it would be up to each jurisdiction if they wanted to adopt this practice. Councilmember Gibbons, I think you're next.
I was just going to offer that the legislation to be elected is you have to live in your jurisdiction. Local cities could adopt local ordinances that say you have to have 75% of your meeting attendance jurisdiction. You might be able to handle it that way.
Thanks, Councilmember Gibbons. Mayor Burt.
Yeah, thanks. Just following up on that same issue, clarifying question that this legislation, I assume, would not in any way constrain a city council from placing higher standards like the ones on assuring that the council members are typically participating from within state if a city wanted to do that or something else. Is that correct?
Nothing in the bill prevents that. I'm not totally clear on how local ordinances would interact with state law in that way. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Allison.
The Brown Act does allow for each council to adopt their own provisions in terms of how they run their meetings. So I'm not, yeah, I would say that our bill does not stop a council from doing that if
Good.
they wanted to.
Great. That I think helps resolve the issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor Burt. Councilmember Montano.
Thank you, Chair. So some clarification, does this also include members of the public? For them not to disclose for them not to disclose their addresses?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if a local body elects to adopt these provisions, then they would have to offer live streaming to the public and a way for the public to address the body remotely. And so that would be without the public having to disclose any location.
And I can jump in.
does that-
Legally, we actually can't require members of the public to disclose their location. So regardless of if AB 1944 moves forward, we still would not be able to do that. Legally, we can't mandate that they disclose where they are. We can always ask.
And does that also include let's say that they're communicating by email, does that also include the address, the email address?
Do you mean, would we make them disclose their email address? Like if it's associated with a Zoom account or something?
Right.
No, there's nothing in our bill that requires that.
No, I'm just concerned because we've had abuses in the past where from the public that, verbal abuse and just, like hate mail. And there was no requirement to put an address, or there was no, and I'm just thinking that, I just don't want it to be an abusive situation. So that's my concern. I don't want it to open up as an abuse, especially for people that have some hidden agenda, hate. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any anything that can alleviate that or stop that from happening.
Yeah, I know that's been an issue in person as well, unfortunately. And so our bill doesn't change anything about that. We don't require any identification, and that's how local governments have been running their meetings throughout the pandemic. And with the bill that's in effect now, AB 361, that people can adopt in their legislative bodies.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. And State Senator Cortese, I think his bill is a little bit closer to the scope you were describing.
Hello,
And
testing, hello.
Hello, who's there? Testing. Is that you, Councilmember Jane? So because of the time, I will take Alyssa, Darcy, and Peter, and then I'll close comments and then look to see if there's a motion to support AB 1944. So Alyssa, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Sure, thank you so much. And apologies for not being on camera. I am having issues with my technology. So, very good that we're discussing this bill, right? It's a challenge that we've all had. One thing that came to mind when thinking about this bill was that for some council members, they go on maternity leave and their cities may not have a policy. Sunnyvale has one, which is important to have, but would this also allow people on family leave to be able to participate in their councils remotely during that time?
Yeah.
With that, yes. Yes, it does.
Yes.
It would allow that. And that's actually one of the proposed benefits of AB 1944.
Yeah, I think that's really important to call out because, you know, that being able to have family leave and have flexibility can, you know, the lack of that because of in-person meetings can be a barrier to some people running for office. So I'd like folks to consider that as well as something that makes that more available. I also appreciate the ability for cities to opt in, like if they already have policies or if they want to go ahead and change it to suit them. So I appreciate the spirit of this bill and, you know, look forward to seeing what other policy innovations we can make in order to really seize on some of the benefits of the pandemic. If, you know, silver linings, I'd rather say. But thank you very much for the presentation, the helpful answers.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Mayor Paul.
Thanks, Chair. So just two very brief points. You know, in fact, last time we voted on this, I was one of 3 abstentions with yourself and our colleague, the representative from Gilroy, who's here today. So I will say for Cupertino's part, what I wanted to do was to find out from my colleagues where they stood on this. And we brought this through our legislative review committee. They support it. And so I will be supporting this. However, we do have concerns with regard to disclosure of location. And so I completely agree with the concerns that have been raised. And I would not necessarily say we should change this, but if we could at least define the contours in such a way that people could be required to disclose whether they are intra-jurisdictional or extra-jurisdictional, which is to say, are you calling from inside of our city or outside of our city? You know, personally, I would even keep the noticing requirements, giving an elected official, you know, 1 week or however many days you post notice before the meeting, I think is reasonable. If you know you're not going to be there, then just let people know, you know, where you are. And again, it could be intra-jurisdictional or extra-jurisdictional. So that's my comment. I do support this as written, though. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Paul. Councilmember Leroy Munoz.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I certainly do appreciate the time to bring this in front of my council. We had an opportunity to discuss it. I hear the points that are being raised. Our council has come to the decision that we ultimately cannot support the bill. We understand that each council has the opportunity to elect whether or not this is the right system for them. For us, it's a question more of the signal it kind of sends. We really did tease out of this discussion that we want to encourage to the strongest extent possible in-person participation, allowing members of the public to see their elected officials face to face. We know there's so much value in that. And as a city council that has sometimes had challenges recently with participation in person, we just wanted to make sure we were sending the message that we believe to be most important. So respectfully, we will not be supporting the bill.
Thanks, Peter. And Maria or Allison, I don't know, the response that came to mind, and it's good hearing different perspectives, but the AB 1944 wouldn't actually prevent council members from appearing in person. It just gives them that option to not have to disclose their private address. But valid point, Peter, and I do want to thank the city of Santa Clara for submitting their report on AB 1944. Kathy Watanabe was very kind to send that forward. So I hope you're all able to see that in the packet. And so with that, I will look to see if there's a motion to recommend to the city's board. And because we do have suggested changes, this could be a support in concept with or propose amendments. Mayor Elahi.
Yeah, I would move that we support the legislation, but add to it that while addresses do not have to be disclosed, the person, if they're not appearing in person, should disclose what city they are calling in from. Because I think that gives them enough protection. If they just disclose at least their city, that should be enough. So if you can add that to the bill, I think it will make more sense.
Thank you. Councilmember Gibbons, are you going to second the motion?
I'm going to offer a friendly amendment.
Please.
Which is simply to say, support the motion, the legislation with amendments. And then we can document what the amendments will be and work with the legislator to get the right amendments. that would be an offer for a friendly amendment to Council or Mayor Elahi.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, the amendment accepted, so motion by Mayor Elahi. Councilmember Gibbons, will you second that?
I will second.
Thank you. Auden, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, I will now call the roll. Mock,
Yes.
Mock, aye. Bert,
Abstain?
Bert abstain. Walia,
I vote to abstain.
Walia abstain. Cisneros,
Aye.
Cisneros, aye. Little Munoz,
No,
was that an,
No.
that was a no.
okay, thank you. Gibbons,
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Montano,
Abstain.
Montano abstain. Elahi,
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Jones,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Fliger,
Abstain.
Fliger abstain. Paul,
Yes.
Paul, aye. Kame,
Yes.
Kame, aye. Santa Clara, Becker,
Yes.
Becker, aye. And Rennie,
Aye.
Rennie, aye. With 9 ayes, 1 nay, 4 abstentions, and 1 absence, the motion carries.
Thank you, Auden, and thanks everybody, and Maria and Allison, thanks again for coming back. We will skip item number 4, which are other bills because of the time, and go straight to any announcements from committee members. And if anyone has future agenda items, please feel free to email me directly. Seeing no hands, public comment. Do we have any public comment, Auden, on non-agendized items?
Liz has her hand, or she had her hand up.
I see your hand. Go ahead.
I just offer that Valley Clean Energy has a position on a number of bills, and I'll just send that out for your information. And if you wish to circulate it, that would be fine. Thank you.
That'd be great, Liz. Thank you. I don't see any members of the public with their hands raised. And so at 6:44 p.m., we will adjourn the Legislative Action Committee. Thanks, everybody. And I think we move straight into the Selections Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
So let me ask Auden to switch Mariko and I for this one, please. This is Rob.
Okay.
And are we staying on this this Zoom?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I think we're ready to go.
So why am I have a question. Why is my name on the screen? Someone else? Can you guys see the screen? So
You need to start charging royalties, Carmen.
no, there's another person that has my name on under
Yeah.
there.
It's on.
Okay. All right. It's gone now. Oh, no.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Odd, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Gibbons,
Here.
Gibbons present. Paul,
Here.
Paul present. Laura Munoz,
Present.
Laura Munoz present. Anander, Anander is absent. Mock,
Present.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Gibbons? Here. Gibbons present. Paul? Here. Paul present. Laura Munoz?
Present.
Laura Munoz present. Anander?
Present.
Is someone playing a recording of the meeting?
Anander is absent.
No, I said
Mark?
present. Hello.
Present.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think there is some issue with my.
I'm sorry. Yes. Gibbons?
Ani-
Gibbons present. Paul? Paul present. Leon Munoz? Present. Leon Munoz present. Ananda?
Present.
Is someone playing a recording of the meeting? Ananda is absent.
No, I said present. Hello. I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think there is some issue with my. I'm sorry. Yes.
I guess everybody should mute because somebody's recording is coming through.
Okay, thank you. It has stopped. It was very confusing for a moment, but I appreciate your patience. All right. Okay, and so Ananda, we have present, Mock, we have present, and Sayak.
Here.
Sayak is present, Montano. Montano.
Here.
Montano is present, Alahi.
Present, and I guess Mariko's sign, Carmen is showing up on her TV screen, I guess.
We can
That's
rename her in a moment. Thank you. Alahi is present, Constantine.
Present.
Constantine is present, Hicks.
Present.
Hicks is present, Bert.
Here.
Bert is present, Jones.
Present.
Jones is present, Jane.
Here.
Jane is present, Walia.
Present.
Walia is present, and Klein.
Present.
Klein is present with 15 present. We have a quorum.
Great, we made it through roll call. Now we're going to move to the consent agenda and the approval of the January 13th, 2022 City Selection Committee meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda.
So
I'll
moved.
make I think you need to take public comment though, just in case.
All right. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second, please.
And I'll make the motion.
All right, I heard a motion and. I think I
I'll
heard a
second it. That's fine.
Thank you. Auden?
All right, I will now call the roll. Mock.
Yes.
Mock, aye. Walia.
Aye.
Walia, aye. Bert.
Yes.
Bert, aye. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, aye. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, aye. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, aye. Lero Munoz.
Yes.
Lero Munoz, aye. Alahi.
Aye.
Alahi, aye. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Sayak.
Aye.
Sayak, aye. Hicks.
Abstain as I was not there.
Hicks abstain. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Jane.
Yes.
Jane, aye. Anander.
Aye.
Anander, aye. Montano.
Yes.
Montano, aye. And with 14 ayes and 1 abstention, the motion carries.
Thank you. So on to the appointments. The first one is the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG. And we need to appoint 2 representatives for seat 1 and 2. The current representative is the Honorable Liz Gibbons from Campbell, who is not seeking reappointment. We have 3 letters of interest: Lisa Flagger of Los Altos, Sergio Lopez from Campbell, and Yvonne Martinez Beltran from Morgan Hill.
But I'm kind of curious, you know,
So
that he's talking about.
would any of the prospective appointees like to take a minute to speak?
I see Councilmember Lopez has his hand raised.
Awesome. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you. I would actually like to respectfully withdraw from consideration for this position, although I'm interested in seeking appointment as an alternate if that is an option. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. So Councilmember Lopez is withdrawing his name. So we have two individuals who have expressed interest. Councilmember Gibbons.
For point of discussion, I was willing to put my name in for taking a transition to the positions of executive board. We've done a lot of chatting about how to make the transitions and how to appoint people, and I'm willing to provide some interim guidance.
We would definitely welcome your guidance. And if you can work with Mariko, who's going to spearhead an ad hoc committee to work on a strategic plan and process, that'd be greatly appreciated. All right, Councilmember Syak.
Actually, that was also the question, and why I raised my hand is just the discussion that we've been having since a prior board meeting about looking at the various appointments and how we could be a little bit more strategic with them and the work that we're doing within City Association. And so you've already mentioned this ability to look at and create I guess, a subcommittee. So do we need to make that into a motion, or is this something that you as president can just assign to us?
I believe I have that ability to just make that decision and assign to you, unless Gary corrects me. And I don't hear him correcting me, so I think I'm right.
I stepped away. If it's significant, you can repeat it.
Oh, do I have the ability to appoint a ad hoc subcommittee?
Absolutely. The president always has the ability to form any committees that he or she may wish, as long as there's not more than a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Gary.
Sure.
And Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, President Jones, and I will be brief in the interest of time. I am applying to be reappointed to the ABAG Executive Board. I was initially appointed in 2020, and so I've served alongside Councilmember Gibbons for the last 2 years. And it's very important, like any other regional board, to have consistency and continuity. And so with the leadership and all the work that I've done over the last 2 years, I look forward to continuing being your voice and representative on ABAG. And I also want to point out that I'm not applying to the Regional Planning Committee. I've been on that committee since 2019, and it was the first ABAG committee I served on, and I wanted to leave it open for anybody else who may be interested in learning about ABAG. I thought that was a great way for me to learn before I served on the board. And so I'll stop there, but thank you so much, and I would be honored to continue serving as one of your ABAG representatives.
Thank you. And I see Councilmember Beltrain has her hand raised. She'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I currently am very appreciative that I was appointed as the alternate for ABAG. I've sought this committee, I think, since I came onto council, being that I'm an urban housing and economic development is my specialty. I have been on the Cal Cities and serving on their housing and economic development policy committee for the past 2 years. I've served as an alternate on the Housing and Economic Development Advisory Committee for the county. Been involved in the RENA discussions and the technical support, how that would be rolled out. Very interested in the Plan 2050 and Bay Ren, given that it connects to some of the work that I'm doing with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And I would be honored to serve as a primary appointee to the ABAG Executive Board. So I'm hoping that I'll have my colleagues' support tonight. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. So I will now entertain a motion, and this could be a combined motion for seats 1 and 2.
Public.
For the,
I would happy you need to go to the public.
okay, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Nisa Flieger and Yvonne Martinez Beltran as the primary representatives for ABAG.
Second by Klein.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Auden?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who the motion was made by.
Councilmember Jane?
All right, thank you. All right, I will now call the roll. Paul?
Yes.
Paul, I. Montano?
Yes.
Montano, I. Gibbons?
Yes.
Gibbons, I. Hicks?
Yes.
Hicks, I. Sayak?
Aye.
Sayak, I. Jones?
Bye.
Jones, I. Jane?
Yes.
And I. Constantine?
Aye.
Constantine, I. Little Munoz?
Yes.
Little Munoz, I. Klein?
Aye.
Klein, I. Bert?
Yes.
Bert, I. Anander?
Aye.
Anander, I. Elahi?
Aye.
Elahi, I. Walia?
Aye.
Walia, I. And Mock?
Aye.
Mock, I. With 15 ayes, the motion carries.
Great, thank you. The next item is actually a cleanup or administrative item. Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG Regional Planning Committee. It has come to our attention that there are inconsistencies in the city's association's records on the terms for the ABAG Regional Planning Committee. On our website, it says that member Flagger's term expires 6/22. However, in her appointment letter, her term is listed as 2 years starting in 2019. ABAG itself has no rules on this, and the terms are set by the appointing agency. I would like to entertain a motion in a second to retroactively approve Councilmember Flagger's terms for additional year from 7/1/21 to 7/1/22 after we receive public comments. And Auden, do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item?
No, but did we skip doing ABAG alternates? In item 2A?
Yes, I will go back to that item after we finish this.
Okay, sure. There are no members of the public raising their hand on this item.
Approval, Chair.
Thank you. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right. Auden?
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch who the motion was made by.
By Constantine.
Thank you.
Mayor Jones, if I may.
Yes.
And thanks for bringing forward that motion. I'm concerned that the end date is July 1st, because then that would require us to make an appointment July 1st. And I don't know if we have a selections committee meeting scheduled on or before July 1st. And so I wonder if we should, and this, I'm not attempting to get a longer term on RPC. I'm just trying to be practical, especially because we also didn't have any applicants for the RPC. And so maybe extending the term through the next selection committee, which I think is in the fall.
Actually, Councilmember Flagger, we received, we extended the deadline, so we have received 2 applications. for the position.
Then should we amend the motion that my term expires today then, and then have this committee appoint one of the two?
That's up to the maker of the motion if he wants to make that modification, and that's all right with you.
It is okay with me.
Okay. So can the maker of the motion modify the motion that Councilmember Flagger's term ends today? Or not?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now. Yes, we can.
Okay. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. I knew it was going to be one of those days.
I said I will make that modification.
Okay, now we can hear you.
I approve that modification.
Great.
Okay.
That's okay with the seconder?
It is. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Auden?
All right, I will call the roll. Mock,
Yes.
Mock, aye. Bert,
Yes.
Bert, aye. Willia. Willia, aye. Paul,
Yes.
Paul, aye. Gibbons,
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Elahi,
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Klein,
Aye.
Klein, aye. Jones,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Constantine, Constantine,
Aye.
Constantine, aye. Sayok, or is Rennie here in substitute? I am going to mark both as absent then. Little Munoz,
Aye.
Little Munoz, aye. Anander,
Aye.
Anander, aye. Hicks,
Yes.
Hicks, aye. Montano,
Yes.
Montano, aye. And Jane,
Yes.
Jane, aye. With 14 ayes and 1 absent, the motion carries.
All right, now we're rolling. I think we got a rhythm now. We're now going to go back to the alternate for ABAG, and we have 1 letter of interest for the alternate representative, Lucas Ramirez from Mountain View. Lucas, would you like to speak?
He is not present today.
Not present? Okay. Are there any motions? I mean, are there any nominations from the floor for any other individuals? I see multiple hands raised. Joanne, did you want to go first?
Yes, I believe that Sergio Lopez from Campbell mentioned that he would be interested in the alternate position. He was going to withdraw and seek the alternate tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. That's correct. I'm interested in being considered as one of the 2 alternates. Would be honored to have your consideration. I've been active on regional issues and housing issues in particular, which are a major part of the purview of ABAG. And this past year I was honored to be the representative to the annual conference of ABAG, which was great in terms of getting to know the process and being more familiar, and looking forward to continuing to be active, hopefully very soon in person. Would look forward to that, but would be honored to represent the county and region and your perspectives as alternate if called to do so.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Your background and qualifications are very impressive. I'm probably going to be working for you one day. Councilmember Jane?
I think after we go to the public, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
I do not see any members of the public with their hand raised.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Sergio Lopez and Lucas Ramirez as our two alternates to ABAG.
Chair, point of order.
Yes.
In the packet, I thought I saw a letter and it indicates it was extended, that the deadline was extended from Ms. Hung from Cupertino. It does not show that in the amended agenda, but it shows it at the top of the page under the packet.
That's for the Regional Planning Committee.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions on?
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
A second.
Roy Munoz was the second.
Okay, I will now call the roll. Hicks,
Yes.
Hicks, aye. Inander. Inander,
Aye.
Inander, aye. Paul,
Paul, yes.
Paul, aye. Bert,
Yes.
Bert, aye. Sunnyvale, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Klein, aye. Jones,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Mock,
Aye.
Mock, aye. Elahi,
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Gibbons,
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Little Munoz,
Aye.
Little Munoz, aye. Has Rennie joined as an alternate?
Aye.
Rennie, aye. Montano,
Yes.
Montano, aye. Jane,
Yes.
Jane, aye. Constantine,
Aye.
Constantine, aye. And Willia.
Aye.
Willia, aye. With 15 ayes, the motion carries.
Great, thank you. On to the appointment of the position for the Association of Bay Area Governments Regional Planning Committee. We received 2 letters of interest, one from Lucas Ramirez and the other one from Hung Wei. And Lucas is not here with us. Councilmember Wei, I see you're here. Would you like to speak?
Sure. Thank you, Chappie. And I applied for it because I know it's vacant. And also I've been very interested in regional planning, and I've done a lot of webinars. And like yesterday, I just listened to the Seamless Bay Area and the Silicon Valley Venture. So I feel that this is my area of interest, and I have a lot of knowledge about it, and so a passion about it. So I'm hoping that I can have the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, Councilmember Jane?
Yes, Vice Mayor Jones, I believe Lucas's letter said that he would serve if nobody else applied.
That is correct. Councilmember Gibbons?
I just wanted to note that he indicated that he had a conflict this evening and would not be able to be here to speak on his behalf.
Okay. Mayor Paul?
Are you taking a motion, Chair, at this time?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I'll be very pleased to move to nominate my colleague to the committee that we are considering here. Thank you. That would be Hung Wei.
I'll second that.
Okay, and can the maker of the motion make that with the effective start date of today?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. And it was seconded by Mayor Burt. I don't see any other hands raised. Item?
Paul,
Yes.
Paul, I. Hicks.
Yes.
Hicks, I. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I. Montano.
Yes.
Montano, I. Willia.
Aye.
Willia, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Little Munoz.
Aye.
Little Munoz, I. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, I. Mock.
Aye.
Mock, I. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, I. Bert.
Yes.
Bert, I. Anander.
Aye.
Nander, I. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, I. Jane.
Yes.
Jane, I. With 15 ayes, the motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next is the Santa Clara County Emergency Operational Area Council, or the EOAC. We need to nominate one representative from the North County cities, that's Los Altos Hills, Mountain View, and Palo Alto. We have one letter of interest from Jonathan Weinberg, Los Altos. Jonathan, I see is here. Jonathan, would you like to speak?
Hello and good evening, members of the selection committee. Thank you very much for your time and consideration this evening. I will be brief. I've submitted my letter. I know that you've all read it, so you can see my credentials. For the past year or so, since I became a member of the Los Altos Council, I have served as an alternate to the EOAC, and it would be my honor to step up as a voting member. I believe the council's work is extremely important and that I can be a credit to the county, the city, and the association. So thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any additional nominations from the floor? Okay, before I entertain a motion, are there any public speakers? Anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Not seeing one. May I have a motion and a second to nominate the
Excuse
secretary?
me, there's a
Yes.
hand raised by Mayor Enander.
Oh, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
It's for the purpose of making a motion to appoint my colleague Jonathan Weinberg in accordance with his interest and prior service as an alternate.
Great, thank you. Can I get
Second.
a second, please?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Auden?
Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, I. Little Munoz.
Yes.
Little Munoz, I. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, I. Willia.
Aye.
Willia, I. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, I. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, I. Mock.
Aye.
Mock, I. Bert.
Yes.
Bert, I. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I. Anander.
Aye.
Anander, I. Jane.
Yes.
Jane, I. Montano.
Yes.
Montano, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. And Hicks.
Yes.
Hicks, I. With 15 ayes, the motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next is the
Thank you.
Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We need the appointment for a representative to complete a term ending in January 2023. We have two letters of interest, one from Sergio Lopez from Campbell, and the other one from Brian McKeecook from Monte Sereno.
That's Mekachek.
Okay, I wasn't even close. I'm sorry, council member. Mekachek from Monte Sereno. And we've received a late letter of interest from Yvonne Martinez Beltrain from Morgan Hill. Would any of you like to take a minute to speak?
Sure, I'm happy to. And thank you again for your consideration. And Chair Jones, you're far too kind. I don't accept your kind words, but thank you again for the consideration. I strongly believe that environmental issues and public health, as we've seen certainly the past 2 years, are the defining issues of our time. All of us remember waking up to red and orange skies 2 years ago, and the uncertainty that I think we felt in our communities at seeing that level of environmental degradation. And historically, the work, the research, the data, the powers that BACMed has have been essential to protecting our communities, particularly our most vulnerable. Just a little bit about myself and my background. I was born and raised here in Santa Clara County, the son of immigrants, and grew up working class. I was fortunate enough to graduate on a full scholarship from Yale University as the first in my extended family to graduate college. All experiences that I bring with me to my service and my values. Although I was elected 2 years ago, I've had a career of over 10 years in public policy and advocacy. I've passed landmark legislation working with our local delegation. I've worked at all levels of government, local, regional, state, and federal. And to the extent that I've been able to have an impact on the council and beyond, a lot of it on the other bodies that I serve on, much of that has been because of those relationships. So I'd be eager, if called to serve, to be able to hit the ground running, as I've worked with many of the board members up and down the peninsula and into San Francisco. So have that greater Bay Area experience. I also bring subject matter expertise to this board. I presented my original research. I'm also an author and historian. I presented my research at academic environmental conferences. I've published broadly national publications, and I'm currently working on a book with an academic publisher about the history of environmental disasters and federal management, or oftentimes, unfortunately, mismanagement in the United States. So eager to bring that background as well. My vision for the board is to represent the diversity of perspectives that we have in our incredible region. Represent the entire county and region and your perspectives, and not just the narrow interest of a particular district or a particular city. And I love the discussion earlier by some of the board members here about strategy. And I hope that if you will have me, I can continue to represent you and ensure a strong voice for the region. So what I bring is that background. Too often, those who are most impacted by environmental impacts and mismanagement are our most vulnerable working class communities. And these are broad perspectives that I bring to my current decision making, and that I think is a perspective that is needed on BACMed. And hope you'll consider me, hope you'll consider the unique perspective I bring, as well as the collaborative problem-solving approach with the other board members, many of whom I've worked with before. So thanks so much for your consideration, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Councilmember Beltran.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. First, I wanted to just preface with, I do apologize for the late letter. I did have, my daughter had an accident and was hospitalized. And so there was a little bit, had to prioritize there. And I wanted to just, give a little bit of background. Some of the work, my key areas of focus has been in protecting the environment and public health through policy. And I've served, as I've said earlier, on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board for over 3 years, learned an immense amount there, and then have been working with environmental groups and women's groups and our youth organization since I came onto council, and have been advocating for some funding to create our climate action plan in Morgan Hill. I was one of the members who supported the gas ban in Morgan Hill, and advancing that, thinking about our carbon emissions, which directly ties into our air quality and works hand in hand with looking at pollutants and particle matter, that we're looking to figure out how we can continue to keep our air quality safe for our public. I serve on the VTA Policy Advisory Committee, as we know that transportation is one of the largest contributors to pollution of our air. I am serving on the Cal Cities Transportation Policy Committee as well. And I have a further, understanding. I really want to further my understanding of the pollutants and how those key contributors are computed, where we can leverage so that we can change some of these major pollutants and see how we can turn this around. As we know, we're against a clock. And I think like many of us, I really was astonished when we had all of the fires and the lightning complex fire in 2020. Our area was evacuated. It was completely frightening, and looking at the air qualities, people couldn't go outside. And then thinking about recently the relocation of the Reed Hill Airport. And we've just had so many different, the time is here now that we're dealing with these issues on the front line. And again, I'm looking to leverage, my experience with SVCE, and greening our housing stock will work partly with that, as well as how we address looking at greening up our transportation. And so taking all of those into consideration, I think that it's a really great nexus that primes me to be a great representative for our area here in Silicon Valley. So I'm hoping that I will have your support tonight so that we can continue to have healthy air for our residents and breathe long-term. We can meet our California goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and overlap that with ways to address our pollution and climate change together. So thank you for your graciousness to let me speak with the board tonight.
Great. Thank you. And finally, Councilmember Mikachu. Did we?
Hello.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Brian Mekachuk, and I'm asking the selection committee to appoint me to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board of Directors. As set forth in my letter to the selections committee, I have a very strong interest in environmental sustainability, and clean air is a fundamental requirement for a healthy and sustainable future. I'm a huge advocate of clean energy and have multiple EVs and have an all-electric home. I became a US citizen in 2019 and ran in the 2020 election in Monte Sereno. I believe that I bring a strong combination of experience and skills to represent the 15 cities of the Cities Association well on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board. I have the time and interest to meet the commitments required to serve on that board. I'm open-minded, collaborative, and have a functional knowledge of finance and accounting, which is needed by the Bay Area Air Quality Management Board. I believe that Mr. Constantine and also Mayor Rennie understand the issues that are facing the board, and they need some finance and accounting skills on that board. If nominated to serve as your representative on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board, I will endeavor to become a member of the Budget and Finance Committee. I'd be honored to have your support for the appointment to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now entertain any additional nominations from the floor. Hearing none, we will go to public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, we have one member of the public with their hand raised, Stephen Rosenblum, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking. You're now allowed to talk.
Good evening, members of the Association of Santa Clara County Cities. My name is Steve Rosenblum. I'm a resident of Palo Alto, and I've been attending meetings of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District for more than 5 years now as an interested observer and as a member of 350 Silicon Valley to report back to them what is going on at the Air District and what we might be interested in supporting or working on. The thing that I've learned during the time I've done this is that the work is highly technical, involving a lot of reading by the person selected. And it involves not only technical issues, say monitoring pollutants, but also complying with multiple regulations by the California Air Resources Board, the Environmental Protection Agency, and many other agencies. So it not only requires intentions to do well, but it requires a lot of really difficult legwork to keep up with the information flow that's necessary. So I really urge anybody willing to take this job on to take account of the time commitment required to do it right. You're also going to be dealing with staff who are supposed to be your in-house experts, whom you need to ask difficult questions of, because as being bureaucrats, they're going to want to take the easy way out rather than do something difficult and something that might lead to litigation down the road where they'll have to justify their actions. So if you really want to take the interests of the residents of the Bay Area to heart, you have to be willing to read the information from staff and be willing to ask them hard questions about why they're recommending what they're recommending, and be willing to go toe-to-toe with large industrial polluters like the 5 Bay Area refineries, which have been polluting our air for decades and not being held properly to account. And for local polluters, we have the Lehigh Cement Quarry, which has been also getting away with a large amount of violations with very little consequence. So I urge the person that takes this job. I don't know any of the 3 people that have put their hands forward, but I urge them to be prepared if they take the job for a lot of hard work and a good outcome if they're willing to stick to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for public comments?
Yes, we have no more members of the public here speak.
Okay. Mayor Rainey?
Thank you, Chappie. I had my hand raised because actually everything Mr. Rosenblum said is important, particularly the time commitment. I am your other appointments at BACMed, and maybe we want to actually ask all the candidates to confirm that they are committed to the time commitment. Next meeting, we're starting to go in person. It's actually going to be hybrid, but I believe we need a quorum to show up. So that adds the additional time of driving up to San Francisco and back. Board meetings are usually at least 3 hours long, and we've been having more than one a month some of the time. So we have had some board meetings that have gone 6 hours or more at a time. They're all during the day. Nothing happens in the evening. And most people are on 2 other committees, subcommittees of the board, which also are usually around 2 hours long also. So I wanted to make sure that all the candidates are committed, and that doesn't count studying. It's pretty technical, particularly when we start, updating a new rule. There's a lot of studying to understand that rule, particularly if it's coming out of a subcommittee that you're not in. So I recommend maybe we reconfirm with each of the candidates that they are willing to spend the time on this. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to let Mayor Ellie speak first
I'm okay with taking it back to the candidates to make sure they still want to consider the position so that we don't might save us some voting time, I suppose. So if you want to take it back to the candidates, that's fine.
Okay, can we allow the candidates to speak?
Chair, this is Councilwoman Martinez Beltran, and yes, I'm committed.
Thank you. Councilmember
And
Lopez? Or-
thank you. And absolutely, I understand that of the committees being considered tonight, this is one of the most time and intensive and applied with that knowledge, and would certainly seek to be an active member. I have a flexible job during the day where the commitment during the day would not be an issue, and I would seek to be in person as much as I possibly could.
Thank you. And Councilmember Makachuk?
Absolutely. I'll make the commitment. And in fact, I would offer to carpool with Mayor Rennie if we're allowed to carpool on the way up and back from San Francisco.
Thank you. Back to Mayor LA.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're really privileged. We have three amazing candidates. All of them have lots of experience in this area, and they're willing to serve us all and serve the communities. And that's the greatest thing. I want to put in a plug for my vice mayor of Montecito, Brian Makachek. He's a living environmentalist. His house is totally environmental, solars and EVs and everything else. And what we've especially been happy about in Montecito is we're in the project of building an NXE, which is a building that's been sitting there it was a post office, and for the last 5 years, it's been sitting vacant. So Mayor Pro Tem Makachek took that on, and he's converting it into a showcase model of environmentalists with solar energy and with the heat pumps and with everything else, and even with gray water schemes. So it's going to become a real show, and hopefully we can get it done by this December, and you're all invited to come and check it out. He is very aware of, and he gets in his hands really dirty. He gets into it deep. He gets into the contract bidding, and he's a CPA also by profession. So I think we've got great candidates, but I would like to put in a plug for Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Burke?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really appreciative of the candidates. I was concerned that this really important position that has such a big time commitment would not result in us having the representation that it now looks clear that we will. So thanks very much. It's really folks with exceptional background and commitment, and thanks also to Mayor Rennie. A procedural question though is we've on this body, it seems that we've not had I haven't been experiencing contended seats for appointments, and we tend to have a nomination for a single candidate. Have we ever instead simply go a roll call and vote for the candidate of our choice?
We have done that in the past. The way I was doing it now was a nomination, then an up-down vote.
Well, I would move that, I'd move that we do the roll call vote in this circumstance.
Chair Jones, we can do that. I just wouldn't be able to project down the screen.
Okay.
And if that's a formal motion from Mayor Burt, I would second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Guess you're gonna have to figure out.
Chair, if I think at your discretion also, you could elect to do it that way, and I'd withdraw the motion, or we can do a roll call.
No, we'll go ahead and do it the way you propose. We just can't display it on the screen, but Mayor Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Can you please repeat what the motion on the table is?
The motion is to vote for an individual as opposed to a nomination with a yes/no vote.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. And I apologize for my timing here. Can I ask one question of the candidates with a 30-second response time, if I may?
Yes, go ahead, Mayor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. To the candidates, as I'm sure you know, we have outside of Cupertino and the West Valley cities, one of the greatest polluters, if not the greatest polluter in the Bay Area, the Lehigh Cement Factory. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that particular facility and what your posture would be if you were on the back med board for the next 7 or 8 months. Thanks.
First.
Who do we have first that wants to respond to that?
Councilmember Mike Kachuk, your talking is permitted. I believe you had your hand raised first.
Hi. We've got standards and everyone has to meet those standards. So I would encourage a fairly hard line on those standards. If you're not going to meet the required emissions or be below the required emissions, then you've got to face the consequences for doing that.
Okay. Councilmember Beltran.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, quite honestly, I don't have the wherewithal on the cement company itself, but what I would say is I would absolutely work to understand what the regulations are. If Baymac is looking to update any of those and advance those, make sure that everybody is complying with that and see where we might actually be able to gain some ground, because as we've said before, we really need to work further, understand how we can work together and make our air quality continue to be clean. So if there are, it sounds, Councilmember Paul, it sounds like there's some concern there. I would certainly want to sit down with you and understand what your concerns might be, and go further and understand that and how we can resolve if there is an issue, how we might be able to do that, so that we have everybody being held to the same standard and that it's equitable. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the question. I followed this issue closely as it's intersected with Santa Clara County, and in particular Supervisor Smidian's leadership on this issue. So I do appreciate the work that's gone there. And I believe strongly in holding any actors and polluters accountable to strict regulations and making sure they fulfill their commitments.
All right, thank you for answering that question. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to Dr. Cody. I know she's been patiently waiting, and I'm sorry that this has gone a little long, but we're going to be wrapping this up, and we're anxiously waiting to hear from you, Dr. Cody. All right, Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just had a quick question, a follow-up as Darcy Paul's question. Milpitas has had those odor issues, and I just want to ask if you would allow the candidates to answer a question if they're familiar with some of the problems of Milpitas and how would they tackle that? If you allow that. I know we're pressed for time. Any candidate can speak up if the chair allows us.
Yes, but this will be the last question to the candidates because we have to move on.
Right.
Councilmember Mekachuk, your talking is permitted.
Hi, I'm not familiar with the issues in Milpitas, but I would certainly like to explore them with you and make sure that your interests are represented at the board level and at the staff level. I would absolutely meet with you and the folks from Milpitas. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't see any other. Oh, Councilmember Lopez.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I'm familiar with the trash issues, the history of litigation, and some of the activist groups from Milpitas. But certainly, I'll just say broadly, we'll have an open door policy, seek to be accessible and represent your interests as well as the residents of your community and learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Beltran.
Thank you, Councilmember Montano. I'm sorry that I don't want to take any more time. I don't have a depth of knowledge in this area. And so I would just say that, again, as I said to Councilmember Paul, I'd be very happy to sit down with you and understand what's going on there as well as anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to close questions and we have a motion and a second. And we're going to do a vote where you vote for the individual.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
So the motioner stated that you have the discretion. So rather than go through a roll call vote to see if we'll vote that way, if you are amicable to having that done by a roll call vote by us giving the names of the people we'd like, then you can just go ahead and do that without having a roll call vote, Chair.
Okay, I'm sorry. Get that to me again.
So the motion is
how's that different than how we were proceeding?
just so that we don't have to do a roll call vote to approve the motion.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. And that actually wasn't my intent. The intent was to actually go directly into voting for the candidates.
Well, you said we have a motion in a second, so I thought that's what you were doing. I apologize, Chair.
No, it's quite all right. Glad you clarified it. Mayor Walia.
Very quickly, the order in the roll call vote, is it last name alphabet of the person or the city? In what order? I get thrown off many times. That's why I want to be very quick.
Yes, Auden, you do it randomly.
Yes, that's a requirement.
Yeah, it's random.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Auden.
Did we take public comment? We did, right? Okay, great. Then Rennie,
Mekachuk.
Rennie Mekachuk, Anander,
Lopez,
Anander Lopez, Jane,
Mekachuk.
Jane Mekachuk, Klein,
Lopez,
Klein Lopez, Paul,
Lopez, Mekachuk in that order. Lopez, thank you.
all right, Paul Lopez, Montano,
Lopez,
Montano Lopez, Jones,
Lopez,
Jones Lopez, Gibbons,
I'll defer for the moment.
would that be an abstention?
No, I'm just deferring my vote for the moment.
Okay. Constantine,
Beltran,
Constantine Beltran, Walia,
Mekachuk, with due respect to the other two fabulous candidates.
Walia Mekachuk, Alahi,
Mekachuk,
Alahi Mekachuk, Mock,
Mekachuk,
Mock Mekachuk,
and then Lopez.
Hicks,
I'd like to vote for all three, but Lopez.
Hicks, Lopez, Burt,
Lopez,
Lopez, Raul Munoz,
Beltran,
Beltran, and Gibbons,
Lopez.
Gibbons, Lopez. We have 8 votes for Lopez, 2 votes for Beltran, and 5 for Mekachuk.
all right. Congratulations. Okay. We are on to public comments on non-agenda items.
Chair Jones, very quickly, do we need an alternate for this? I know we went through that a couple months ago on something else. No? Okay, good. I got the answer. Thank you.
And I don't see any hands raised for public comments on non-agenda items. So this meeting is adjourned and we're going to go right into our board meeting. So anybody has to get off and join. Let's do it quickly.
President Jones, while that is happening, may I please suggest that we change the order in that and go straight to item number 3? We have Dr. Cody, who's been waiting for close to an hour now.
Yes, we are going to change the order of the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
If anyone in the participants list needs to be promoted, please raise your hand and I can do so.
Okay, so let's do a quick roll call. On.
All right, IB.
Present.
IB present. Paul.
Here, Paul here.
Paul present. Laro Munoz.
Present.
Laro Munoz present. Fliger.
Here.
Fliger present. Mock.
Present.
Mock present. Rennie.
Present.
Rennie present. Montano.
Here.
Montano present. Elahi.
Here.
Elahi present. Constantine.
Present.
Constantine present. Abakoga.
Here.
Abakoga present. Bert.
Here.
Bert present. Jones.
Present.
Jones present. Becker. Becker is absent. Willia.
Present.
Willia present. And Klein.
Present.
Klein present with 14 present. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And we're going to change the order of the agenda and we're going to move item 3 first. And so Gary, do I need, since we're changing the orders of the day, I need a quick vote on that as well, right?
I think you can just ask if there's any objection. If there's no one who has an objection, then you don't need to go through the motion process.
Oh, awesome. Are there any objections to changing the orders on the agenda? Seeing none and seeing head shaking in agreement, we're going to move in place item 3. And again, Dr. Cody, thank you so much for your patience. So this is a presentation on local control items of interest, which is a board priority. And the topic is vaccines, testing, and masks as we transition from the pandemic to endemic. And Dr. Cody will present, and she's the Health Officer and Public Health Director of Santa Clara County. So welcome, Dr. Cody. And does Dr. Cody have permission to talk?
Yes, I see her in the panelist list, but I don't know what the issue is.
Dr. Cody, you're muted. Can you take yourself off mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. I was on the phone. I'm not sure why it didn't go through. What I was saying is, so thank you so much. Delighted to be here. My colleague, Dr. Tomas Aragon is here as well. And I know that he has a hard stop at 8. If he's still on, I'd actually invite him to make any comments first and then I can go.
Okay, I think he had to leave already.
Already? Okay.
So, and we're gonna invite him back.
Okay. All right.
to speak.
Well, I will give you the local perspective. First, before I get started, I just wanted to say that I wouldn't say that we're moving into an endemic place, and there's not really a good definition of endemic. It's actually a bit more of a societal decision about when we're going to tolerate the amount of illness and death that we have. So I don't feel like we're in endemic yet, although I know that the body politic is sort of moving that way. If I could have the first slide. What I'm going to do in just the next little bit, first give you a review of the epidemiology of COVID in our county. Then I want to share with you a little bit about vaccinations, particularly upcoming vaccination for the youngest children under 5 years old. And then end with some comments about our partnerships between the city and the county and things that cities, tangible things that cities can do. So for the first, this slide is our epidemic curve, and this is an epidemic curve that many of us have been looking at daily for over 2 years, and I would say that my mood kind of moves with these waves. And we just came out of our fifth wave, the Omicron wave. So we started in spring of 2020, then summer 2020, and then that awful winter 2021. And we had our Delta wave and our Omicron wave. And you can just see there towards the right that actually things are beginning to drift up again. And that is largely a child of Omicron, a BA2, a sublineage that's even more infectious than Omicron. And then, as you may have read, there's actually like the grandchildren of Omicron, which are even more infectious that are currently spreading in New York. And I don't think there's any reason to think that we wouldn't see them here as well. Next slide. Our hospitalizations are here. And what you can see is that they're back down to where they were sort of between the Delta and the Omicron wave, or maybe a little bit less. So they're stable, not quite how we were looking in the summer of 2021, where we all thought that we were done, but a little bit better. And as you all probably know, the hospitalizations lag the cases. So we wouldn't expect to see an uptick in hospitalizations yet. The next slide. The deaths follow the hospitalizations, and I just want to point out here, so we've had over 2,200 residents of Santa Clara County die during this pandemic. And the number of deaths that we had during the Omicron wave, significantly more, as you can see, than the Delta wave. And many people see that and were a bit surprised because of the narrative that, hey, it's just Omicron, it's really mild illness, nothing to worry about. But when you have just the sheer number of infections that we do, even if a smaller percent of people become seriously ill and die, it can still add up to a lot of people. And you can see here what that looks like. So certainly not as devastating as the winter of 2021. And that's in large part because of the extraordinarily high vaccination and booster rates that we have in our county. We actually, I believe, are the most highly vaccinated large county in the whole country. Over 85% of the whole population is vaccinated. Over 90% of people who are eligible are vaccinated. And now I think we're getting close to 70% of eligibles are boosted. So that's quite protective, and I think kept that last little bit of the curve lower than it would have been otherwise. Next slide. These are the wastewater data, and I'm going to talk a little bit. I just want to thank the cities again and again and again for your partnership. I think that these data, which when we were approached by Stanford, I think it was sometime, feel like it was in the spring of 2020, I've sort of forgotten now, but we thought, well, that's very interesting. I have no idea how we'd use it, but it sure is interesting. So it started out as I don't know what we would do with it, but it's interesting. And now I personally look at these data every day, and I find them to be some of the most useful. And they're particularly useful now because many people aren't testing any longer with PCR. And PCR tests are the ones that are reportable to public health and that show up in those case numbers. People are testing with home tests, antigen tests, and they're not reportable. And so we lose our visibility into what the trends are. Well, except that we don't, because in Santa Clara County, we have not one, but 4 sewer sheds where we're doing the SARS-CoV-2 monitoring. And that covers the vast majority of the population living in our county is therefore under surveillance. So these curves are a little bit bumpy, but in general, the trend is over the last month that the quantity of SARS-CoV-2 in the wastewater in all 4 sewer sheds has been drifting up. The drift up is a little bit more marked in the Palo Alto sewer shed as compared to the others, and the San Jose sewer shed. It's most difficult to see the drift up in the San Jose sewer shed, but I think it's slowly drifting up as well. And next slide. So this is just a very brief summary of the priorities moving forward. As you know, there's been lots and lots of work done during the pandemic, different streams of work, but now where do we go from here? So number one priority is prevention, and that's not just prevention of people getting really sick and requiring a bed in the hospital, but that includes prevention of infection. So we do that by emphasizing the multiple layers with no one layer being perfect. You got to layer them up. You need more layers when we're in a surge, and you can peel them off when we're in a valley. But vaccination, masking, testing, and ventilation are all really important. And the reason why I emphasize prevention of infection and not just prevention of, bad stuff is because some people are super vulnerable and they're not going to do well with any kind of infection. And the other is there's long COVID, which I think nobody wants. And finally, when people are sick and can't go to work, there's lots of financial and social disruptions from that alone. So that's why we want to prevent infection. Another priority is engagement, particularly with communities where most vulnerable people live. We want to make sure that we are ensuring access and reducing every barrier possible to the resources that people need. Our public health infrastructure, we are working on building and rebuilding in 3 key areas: surveillance, so that we know what's happening, being able to respond to outbreaks, and we're investing quite a bit in community engagement and building relationships with individual community organizations. Our mass testing and mass vaccination is dedicated to staying nimble and able to scale up and down as needed. And then we continue to work with healthcare providers so that we're prepared for whatever comes. And I would say that given what the decisions that we're making nationally, I think that we're going to continue to see variants emerge for the foreseeable future. I don't see any, I think the conditions are present for new variants to emerge. And so I think that we are going to just have to continue to be prepared and to prevent infection with our multiple layers the best that we can. Next slide. There's been lots of discussion, I know, about the county and the state and where we aligned and where are we not aligned. And the top level message is that as of now, we are generally pretty darned aligned with the state. So both at the county and the state level, indoor masking is recommended, although no longer required at the state or at the county, except for the state requires masking in certain high-risk indoor settings, healthcare, shelters, jails, and long-term care facilities. And it's actually the requirements on public transit are a federal requirement. And then in addition, the county, for county employees in county buildings, we require indoor masking. And that's because the county generally, if it's a health officer recommendation, then the county requires what the health officer recommends. So we are still all masking indoors. The vaccination of personnel in higher risk settings, the state health officer order and my local health officer order are pretty similar. There were two differences and now there's just one difference. So the difference that remains is that the local order is a bit broader. So a broader definition of high risk setting. The state order does not require vaccination in custody and medical first responder settings, but the local order does. And there's a number of counties that have a broader definition of high-risk settings, and we're one of them. So we require both vaccination and boosting in a broader array of high-risk settings. Next slide. So just to touch a little bit on vaccines for the littlest ones. I don't have a date as to when this is going to become approved, but I'll tell you sort of what the process looks like. So as you may know, it's the Federal Food and Drug Administration that has a subcommittee and then a recommendation. They're the ones that authorize emergency use of a vaccine. Then it gets turned over to the CDC and their advisory group. And they say, okay, this vaccine is authorized, and then we're going to detail how the vaccine is to be used, who should get it, how often should it be given, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have been positioned where really like within hours after the CDC providing their recommendation, we've been able to turn around and begin giving it to whatever new group is eligible. So I guess what I'm saying is once we get the green light for young kids, we'll be giving the vaccine at least at the county sites. Next slide. We've also very importantly begun preparing providers to be able to give this vaccine. So question is, what would the vaccine be for young kids? And essentially it'd be the same vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna. It just would be in a smaller dose and probably multiple doses. So rather than the primary series as it is in adults being 2 doses, it's most likely actually to be 3 doses and a smaller one. Lots of providers aren't really set up, pediatric providers aren't really set up to give this vaccine, which is it's kind of not what you would expect because providers give so many vaccines to kids. But there's just a few different requirements for this vaccine. So our public health pharmacy has spent lots and lots and lots of time working provider by provider by provider to try to get them ready to have vaccine in their office and to be able to vaccinate their patients. Next slide. So when the vaccine is authorized for the littles, first bit of advice is to first, ask the public to check in with their child's regular doctor if their child has a regular doctor, because that's their medical home. And if there's other vaccines that they need, they could get those at the same time, as well as other care, including in the slides a number there. So anyone living in the county without a regular doctor can call that number and help find a provider. If the child's doctor cannot provide the vaccine for some reason, of course, families can make appointments through the county. And we still are maintaining our mass vaccination sites, and those sites will be ready to take care of kids as young as 6 months old. We've got diaper changing tables and we're ready to go. Pharmacies have been a very important partner in vaccination, but most pharmacies won't vaccinate children under 3 years old, and some pharmacies won't vaccinate kids under 5 years old. So they're not going to be able to take as much of the volume as they have for other age groups. Next slide. So I just wanted to end with a little bit on our partnerships. Next slide. So three things that I think cities can do. One, to help encourage families to do what they can to get prepared, stocking up on masks and tests. Two, to help promote vaccination and boosters. And so, yes, very important when the time comes that cities help do promotions for kids 6 months to 4 years through whatever venues you may have. And anything you can do to help folks who haven't been boosted get boosted. So people who haven't been boosted, their immunity has really waned, and they really do need to be boosted. And then finally, just wanted to celebrate the Partnership for Wastewater Monitoring, because I really think that is what we're going to be leaning on more and more for surveillance. So a little, next slide, a little bit more on what can do to encourage families. So one is have a lot of masks on hand. There is actually, folks can get 3 free N95s at pharmacies and community health centers across the county. And there's a reference for how to do that. And as well, free home tests are available, both through the federal program. And then if you have the patience, you can get reimbursed for home tests that you buy. And then finally, encouraging folks to get a plan for access to treatment if they need it. And that's really a plan that should be made with their individual healthcare provider. Next slide. We've got plenty of materials to help when vaccination for young children become available. We've got the key messages there. We have actually a resources, an online drive where there's lots of different resources, videos, flyers, social media campaigns in multiple languages. And we really encourage everyone to use those. And any outreach to daycare, city-operated camps, or what have you. Next slide. I think this is the final slide around wastewater monitoring. So I think I was talking a little bit about this before. As we have less testing, we are going to rely more and more on wastewater. And the wastewater is actually, it's an early indicator. It usually spikes a few days before cases because someone could be shedding and it will show up in the wastewater before they even have symptoms. So the trends are quite reliable. And they actually give us, it's just a sewer shed, but they do give us a sense of whether things are starting to take off in the north part of the county, the south part of the county, and how things are moving across the county. So I want to really thank the cities, because this is not a surveillance system that could be done without the cities. We depend on the partnership with the cities, and these sewage treatment plants couldn't do without you. So happy to stay on for a little bit for questions and discussion. Turn it back to you, Chappie.
Thank you again, Dr. Cody. I'm gonna kick things off. You actually touched on a point that there is a lot of discussion in terms of even the definition of endemic, and for our purposes, at least for my purposes, is almost like a social construct in terms of if you talk to people, see how people are interacting with each other and the use of masks. It's almost like mentally and socially we made a decision as a society to move to an endemic in a social construct. And so my question to you is, can you just help us understand the differences between the way society is behaving and what it really means to be in an endemic situation?
Well, I mean, I think just, there are some definitions of endemic, but the important thing to remember is endemic doesn't mean no longer harmful. And you can think about a lot of endemic diseases that still kill a lot of people. Malaria is endemic. Hepatitis B is endemic. There's a lot of endemic diseases that create, quite a bit of havoc. So even if we say, well, COVID's endemic, it's not as though, we get to, like move along, not going to bother us anymore. So that's just a very important point. But I think that there's still so much change with COVID, and every, it's just, we're so done with the virus, and the virus is so not done with us. So this is a challenge. This is the challenge that we have. It's really a challenge. And I do know, like, we're in a different place in the Bay Area in Santa Clara County. So let's talk about the really positive, the positive things. So we do have a lot of ways to manage the risk, and our communities have stepped up like no other communities have, almost no other communities have, to really take the risk seriously. So I think that's gotten us to extraordinarily high vaccination rates. And even though we have disparities in vaccination, our disparities are less pronounced than in other jurisdictions. So we still have a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of people to protect. But compared to other places in the state and the country, we're in pretty good shape. But the challenge is that we get waning immunity. The vaccines are not, they're not one and done. You need, we're probably, there's a lot unknown, but we're probably going to need to go back and, get additional boosters or different vaccines. And that's very difficult to message, right? Because I think people rightly think, hey, I've been working so hard at this. I did everything I was asked. I got my vaccines. Like, really? Now you're going to make me do more? Right? It feels hard. Masks are super duper protective. And I don't think that we need to wear them all the time, but I do think that we need to wear them indoors when things are trending up. And we never really sort of got down to low. So that's why we still recommend them indoors.
Great. Thank you. Mir Walia.
Thank you so much, Chair. Dr. Cody, a very big thanks. There are not enough words that I can think of to thank you for your service, leading the county, leading the rest of the nation in how you have protected us. With that, just a couple of quick thoughts. I'll put the questions out there. The boosters, when you talk, currently we are at booster number 2. So when you say encourage everyone to get boosted, do you mean the second one as well, if somebody is eligible? With terms of waning immunity, what next? Are we talking duration of 4 months, 6 months in terms of how somebody decides to get boosted? And then in terms of our responsibility as watching the concern for and responsible for the safety of the public in each of our cities, how do we juggle that with the societal change and expectation, as you just talked about, the endemic versus, we as a society think we are in an endemic stage, but the first thing you said was you don't believe so. How do we juggle all of that in terms of our personal lives as well as our public lives? Because we can't, in a public setting, we can't work on a case-by-case basis. We are not that nimble in how we set things up. For example, your recommendation from September is still in place to conduct public meetings remotely if possible. Seems like 6 months ago, things have improved. So just a general sense of that, and I'll stop right there. Thank you so much.
So I'll first answer your question about boosters. So the most important top level message is that if you've never been boosted at all, it's really important to get boosted. So during this Omicron wave, we saw really significant differences both in infection rates and hospitalization rates and mortality rates among people who are vaccinated but not yet, booster eligible but not boosted, and boosted. The boosting really makes a difference. So the first booster is the most important. Yes, there's a second booster now available for folks 50 and up. And I think we were actually having a conversation among the Bay Area health officers about how we talk about this, because it's not a like an urgent, like run now, get your booster right now, the way it was with the first booster. However, yeah, if you're over than 50, and especially if you live with anyone who is vulnerable, or if you yourself have some underlying medical conditions, you should probably do a jog to get your booster. And like I'm over 50, I don't have any medical conditions, and I have it on my list to get a booster, but I haven't done it yet. With the first booster, I did it like as soon as I was eligible. So anyway, top level is the first booster is the most important. And then the second message is if you're over 50, yes, we recommend it. And in addition to just thinking about, like if you're visiting a family member who's elderly and frail a lot, I would probably jog to get your booster, right? Because you don't want to, inadvertently spread an infection to them. That's important. Or if you're going to be doing a lot of traveling and mixing, probably get boosted. Get your second booster. There's not really a downside. There's been some discussion, but none of the data make terribly a lot of sense to me that there'd be a downside from second booster. The other question that comes up is, well, should I time it? Like I don't I want to get it like 2 to 3 weeks before the next, takeoff of a surge. I think it's really tough. I'm not sure these things can be timed. So I would just say, go ahead and get it. And then I don't think I got the second part of your question.
I'm sorry. The immunity part, I think you pretty much covered that. The duration of the booster, and then in terms of being public, responsible for public health in our cities, how do we do that and watch for our public in terms of personal interactions with the public, and also, as I said, your recommendation from September still stays that the public meetings, if possible, be conducted remotely. We can't be that nimble.
Yeah, I would say we're certainly at a place where what people are feeling and what people need and what we all need is to approach this in a very holistic way, and that there are many facets to our health. COVID is but one. It's not the only facet to our health, and so that's the way we need to think about it. So I think that, for a lot of people who have been scared, or who have been isolated, or who have not been doing the things that bring them pleasure, humans need to do those things, right? We need those connections. It's really important for our health to do those things, but it's just a matter of balance. It's just a matter of balance. So with regard to something like a public meeting, the things that I would think about is, all things being equal, doing a meeting like this, it's much safer from a COVID perspective. And, in some meetings, maybe you can have more participation because people don't have to travel to join the meeting. Maybe it removes barriers. But for example, right now, I wouldn't be comfortable in a large public meeting if people weren't wearing face coverings, particularly if it was at a place where the ventilation is lousy. So, there's just, if you had a large room with a high ceiling and it was well ventilated and not many people come to the meeting, you could feel pretty comfortable having an in-person meeting. If your chambers are small and they're absolutely packed and no one's going to wear a mask, I don't think I'd do that. Does that make any sense? It's not, I think one of the central challenges during the pandemic is there have been so many shades of gray, and we've needed to come up with very clear, specific directions, even though it's pretty gray.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Cody.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mayor Constantine.
Thank you, Chair. And Dr. Cody, you're going to sense a theme here, but I want to thank you so much for what you and your colleagues have done. Your actions early on in the pandemic helped save thousands of lives, and the numbers show that our rate of infection was much lower than other surrounding counties and counties throughout the country that didn't take this quickly as an action as you took. So thank you very much. I want to talk about wastewater and the monitoring. I'm looking for it on the dashboard. Is that something that we can look at, or is there something on the website? Because I can't find it, but is there a specific area?
Yes, it's on our website. And so if you go to the data and reports on the website, and then the very first link that you see, I think, is cases and deaths. And the wastewater monitoring, I can almost see it in my mind's eye, it's a little bit more towards the bottom. It's maybe under other projects or other reports or something, but it says wastewater monitoring or something. And so the slide I showed is actually a screenshot of the dashboard.
And when you see trends going in the up direction, what steps or what does the county do with that information from the 4 water districts?
So we synthesize it with the other data that we have, right? So we look at our case, we look at our case counts, we look at our wastewater data, we look at emergency room visits, we look at positivity rates, we look at testing rates, and we put that all together to see whether we're, entering an area where we have a problem. The advantage of the wastewater data is actually we start seeing the wastewater signal usually before we see other signals. And now that we're in an era where so many people are using home antigen tests, I think that the case signal is going to become very difficult to interpret, and we're going to rely even more on the wastewater, which is why it's important. And the decisions that we would make are really around our recommendations, or in some cases mandates around the particular prevention tools. So as an example, when things started, the Omicron wave started taking off in December, and interestingly, we had our first detection in an Omicron case in Palo Alto, and first detection in the sewer shed in Palo Alto the same week. They really tracked together very nicely. I started thinking about what other tools could we use that we haven't used, and that's when we focused on the booster mandate for people in high-risk settings, thinking that if our healthcare workers are sick, they're not going to be able to take care of everybody else that's coming in sick. What can we do to really ensure that they're in as good a shape as possible? So, and with the Delta wave, that's when we implemented the indoor masking mandate, made it required. I think it's going to be tough, to be honest, to reimpose a mandate of any kind at this point, just because of where we as a public are at. But so, I think I'm not sure, to be honest, but I think that we can really focus and tailor our message and back it up with why. Why do we want you to do this thing? Why is it important? Because we're seeing this, and this. It helps with explaining what the risk is.
Understand. And Mayor Klein was good enough to put a link to the dashboard wastewater in the chat, so I can hit that right away and I don't have to do anything. So thank you, Mayor Klein, for that. One last question, Dr. Cody. For the kiddos from 5 to 11, I was a little bit shocked to see the efficacy drop. It started about in the 60% range, but after the second shot, I think shortly after it can drop into the teens if I'm not mistaken. Do you see, or is there going to be a booster or maybe maybe a stronger dose for kiddos that are from 5 to 11?
I think I've seen something that there may be a booster for younger ones. So now there's, you can get boosted, the 12 and up can get boosted. And I think there may be a booster for the even younger ones. I also just, for any kind of vaccine messaging, just saw something recently that was looking at myocarditis. So that's the, very feared, was more common among younger males to get myocarditis after vaccination. And it led a lot of parents of young children to say, well, I'm going to hold off on this. The truth is that myocarditis is also a complication of COVID infection. It's in the kind of the bucket of things, the bad things that happen when you have a COVID infection. And I just saw a study that came out, and it looks like you're much more likely to get the myocarditis from infection as compared to vaccination. So there's a risk with both, but the risk is greater from infection than it is from vaccination. So that's something, just a little tidbit for people who are worried.
Right. And just anecdotally, I just want to mention that what you said about a mask is right on. My daughter got COVID, but for 2 days, she was feeling a little sick. And then it was like, we had to tell her, you can't go back to school and you can't go out and play yet, at least for 5 more days. But when she left her room, she put her mask on. And then when we went to her room, we put our mask on, and neither my wife or myself got it. So masks really do work. So again, Dr. Cody, thank you so much for your work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Klein.
Thank you. And Dr. Cody, I just want to thank you for your partnership with the county, with the cities, over the last 2 years. It's amazing to see that partnership, that exchange of information, the data that you put on the dashboard. I visit it at least once a week, if not more. Are we, from just on the specifics, I know the state went to 2-day-a-week reporting, Tuesday and Friday. Are we doing daily reporting still, or because of the state, we're only doing single or twice a week?
We're kind of going to stay where we are. Right now, what we do is we report cases every day. We report deaths once a week. Some of I think the wastewater gets updated 5 days a week. And I think the vaccination dashboards get updated 5 days a week. So we don't have any plan to scale back. But like everything, it's a balance, and the teams that are working on the COVID then of course aren't working on something else, and there's many other public health data needs. So we revisit the conversation periodically, but I personally still think that it's important to have those updates be more often, so that people can understand what's happening.
And I totally concur. As an elected, I'm often on that page just to see trends, exactly that. And I do think that the wastewater treatment or the wastewater data is actually very interesting. And then finally, I've asked this question before, and I know we're not in an endemic area, but wondering about congregate shelters. This is still the reduction in congregate shelters is still a big issue as we're trying to house some of our unhoused, and the social distancing. And it's like having vaccinations, having masks, but the big thing is social distancing and reduced numbers continues to be a problem. Do you have any feel for when that will go back to some sort of normal and we can actually utilize the shelters better than we have so far?
So I think we're doing quite well as far as vaccination of staff and trying to vaccinate residents in many ways. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know about the rules in shelters are there density rules in shelters?
Oh yeah. So at least Sunnyvale has a transitional shelter, 175 beds, that because of what I was told of county social distancing requirements, and whether or not it's county or state, we're at basically utilizing 80 beds out of 85 beds of 175, which to me is like, okay, if it's seen, if we're in kind of the new world and this is the way it's going to be, does that mean we're permanently reduced to basically 50% of the beds? And that's my worry is, we have unhoused issues, and that's one of our biggest ways to deal with those.
Yeah. I'll actually check back with the team on that because I don't have a good answer to you. My thoughts are that it's about the shared airspace. And so the more people you have in a shared airspace, the higher the probability that somebody's going to be infectious. And then, you're going to have aerosols and someone's going to get sick. And that people can't mask while they sleep. So it's not a practical recommendation to say, well, everyone in the shelter just mask all the time, because they can't. So I don't, we're doing much better as far as, far fewer outbreaks in shelters and in custody and in long-term care facilities, and everything's, quite quiet. So let me check back, because I don't know if there's a specific plan.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for your work.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. So Dr. Cody, I think I'm going to pile on and say that we're really proud of the work that you've done. I know that you were under a lot of pressure and you took very aggressive and strong positions and policies and initiatives that saved lives. And so I want to commend you for that. And just, we know the amount of pressure you were under, and you withstood that pressure and you did what you needed to do. And it's very admirable and respected. Thank you. What I really want to say to you all, which I think you all know, is that I am merely the face of a huge, phenomenal team at the county. I feel so grateful to be at the county, and I couldn't have more support, not just from the county, but from you all in the cities. And I'm just so grateful to be where we are. So it's a huge number of people doing a phenomenal amount of work. I just was the face of it, but amazing people at the county. Many of them, really, really, really phenomenal, phenomenal. And for like 2 years and still going. No, it's definitely an amazing team that you're working with. We're very lucky. I see Steve Preminger. Would you say we're lucky, Steve? We're really lucky. Yeah, really, really, really amazing people. Yeah, and that's recognized as well. But what I always like to say, Dr. Cody, is you got to take the arrows. So go ahead and take the accolades. Yeah. Right. Well, someone once said you'll get credit for things that you didn't do, but you also get blamed for things you didn't do. So it all comes out in the wash. Exactly. So thank you, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Okay. Bye-bye. So we're going to move another item up, and that is the item. Oh, before we do that, Dr. Tomas Aragon, Director of California Department of Public Health, was not able to stay on, but we are going to invite him back for a future meeting. So now we're going to take up item 4, presentation on climate change items of interest, which is another board priority. And the topic is local climate action, 5-year clean energy results and immediate next steps. And the presentation will be done by Silicon Valley Clean Energy CEO, Girish Balachandran.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Members of the board, it's my pleasure to present to you. Obviously, I know several people over here. They are on my board too. So I do have a presentation that hopefully we can share. And as that's coming up, I can tell you that it's going to be a short presentation. The first couple of slides is about what we've accomplished. and in the last 5 years, a summary of that, and then we'll talk about what's coming up, and especially what's coming up this year that will have some impacts on all your cities. And we would love to have your cooperation in getting some major goals accomplished. So I'm not seeing the slides up. Not sure who the MC is here. I could share my screen.
Yes, you have screen sharing permission.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So here's a summary of what we've accomplished in the last 5 years. And many of you know, and many of you had been part of the formation of SVCE. It was, the idea was birthed at the Cities Association, and you put together a team to actually create SVCE. So around 2014 and 2015, and then you created it. So since launching in 2017, we've continued to prioritize local emissions. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you see some of the accomplishments since we've started our service, about a 35% in energy-related annual greenhouse gas emissions, savings to customers, the amount of money that we've spent on and committed to our programs. Our board most recently in March approved what we call a double down program on decarbonization, and essentially double the budget for programs. And we'll talk about that. Millions of pounds of greenhouse gas emissions avoided, and we have committed to 15 renewable power contracts, of which for 716 megawatts and more than 200 megawatts of battery storage. We will be celebrating our 5-year anniversary at the Cupertino Earth Day event, and we have sent invitations to the council members of all our member agencies and also the city managers. So it starts at 11 a.m. We have a reception for which that invite has gone out. If any of you have not received the invite, I apologize for that. I'd be happy to make sure that you get it. Also wanted to highlight the first renewable power project that has come online. The contract was signed in 2018, and since then the developer went about the land acquisition, the permits, and construction. And over here in the middle photograph, you'll see this is a 2,000-acre site in Kings County. And on the bottom left, you see these white kind of little dots or these little rectangles. That's the battery storage. And this rather large project, we have off-takers, several of them in the Bay Area, Stanford, BART, and then from the Central Valley, we have the Power Resources Agency, Central Coast, and then ourselves. Then you see our board chair right here doing the ribbon cutting. So now I want to move on to what's coming up in the coming year that really is going to make a difference in terms of climate change. There's a ton of stuff we can do. And in fact, in some of the earlier comments on the BACMD item, the discussion on transportation came up. Transportation and buildings are the largest source of emissions for us that don't have the kinds of policies that can really get that carbon curve bent down. So our board has really emphasized, let's get more resources put in here. So what I want to talk to you about today is REACH codes. And in the last REACH code cycle in Santa Clara County, 15 jurisdictions adopted REACH codes. And that really influenced the state and the California Energy Commission in setting the bar higher in this coming cycle. So the board has set aside quite a bit of money, not just to support REACH codes, but also incentive programs, financing programs that will basically remove friction from the system when these REACH codes are adopted. So here's a timeline of when REACH codes should be readopted. And as I'm speaking, I'm kind of realizing you all probably know what REACH codes are, but I'm just going to repeat it. REACH codes are the California Building Codes Title 24 that every public agency has to adopt every 3 years. And a REACH code is essentially something you do, you amend the code to go beyond what the state minimum is. And every year the state kind of changes the minimum. They may change lighting standards, they may change insulation standards, hot water heating standards. And so they change that, but any city can go beyond what the state requires, but they have to go through a process. They can't do it willy-nilly. They actually have to follow the same kind of economic analysis that the state does to figure out the minimum code. I did speak to the Santa Clara County City Managers Association yesterday, and so did update them on this timeline also. We plan to have a lot of outreach, formal and informal, to make sure that bodies such as yours, all the city councils in our county, our city managers, our building officials, our stakeholders, advocates, everyone's educated on this as we come to the end of the year when all the councils could likely vote on this. So our goal is to have all our agencies, all 13 of SVC agencies, adopt REACH codes just for for new buildings. That is something we really must do. For new building construction, we really should go all electric. I'll go to the next slide and say, here are the next steps, which is agendize adoption or readoption. So for those of you who have already adopted REACH codes last cycle, you have to agendize it for readoption. Apply for a $10,000 REACH code grant from SVCE. It's just a one-page letter, and you can get all the information related to this at this website. And this website has REACH code information for 3 different counties. It's East Bay, which is Alameda County, it's San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County. So we're all joining together on this. Of course, each of us have our own special needs, but at least in terms of information sharing, this website has all the information and contacts that you would need. I've talked to you about new buildings, but that's just the beginning. The greatest opportunity, literally, when you look at the next few decades, and the toughest thing to do is existing buildings. How do you upgrade existing buildings to also go all electric? So we want to make sure that we all understand there are 2 things we're looking for. It's for new construction. We're hoping that all agencies will adopt that. And for existing buildings, there's a ways to go, but we hope that we'll have a few that adopt REACH codes in that area also. The presentation will be circulated to you, my email address, our project manager, Zoe Elizabeth, and then Benna Chang, who most of you know, also is working on this project, and we are all available to assist you with information or questions you may have. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And Chair, I'm open to take questions.
Great, thank you, Garish. Just so you know, we're still going to try to get Benna back. So just want to keep throwing that out there.
Okay.
All right. Looking for hands. Any questions? Comments? Mayor Burt.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. And even though like Santa Clara, Palo Alto has its own utilities, but we're in a parallel track of moving aggressively toward building electrification like you are, and really look forward to collaborations and learning from each other as we kind of try to leapfrog and move forward. One of the things that has become apparent to us is that as we're looking at broad building electrification and truly scaling it, we're seeing a particular problem in our residential buildings, and it is on the level of the system capacity. Basically, the transformers are not designed to be able to handle even a fraction of the additional electric demands from EV charging combined with appliance electrification. And this shortfall is already there before we're even beginning wide-scale electrification ramping. And so it's apparent that there needs to be a rapid investment by in all likelihood, the state in the educational process to develop that workforce all the way up to power supply engineers, who are probably the most constrained and the longest time lag to develop. And so I just want to raise that issue to you and everyone else here. I've begun to kind of build a coalition to work with Senator Becker and Assemblyman Berman because of his role on higher education to push this initiative forward, and would really welcome collaboration, because I'm very fearful if we don't move quickly, all of our electrification plans are going to hit a brick wall that we weren't really anticipating. So that's just Garisha, I'd look forward to working with you and anybody else who's here who would like to participate in this. I'd really welcome the collaboration.
Councilmember Burt will be happy to collaborate. We'll reach out to you, and yeah, be happy to work with you on this.
Thanks.
Great. I don't see any other hands raised. So Gareth, thank you very much for that presentation and keeping us updated and informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good night.
Good night. All right, so we're going to go back to item 1, the consent agenda. And before I entertain a motion, are there any members of the public who would like to comment on the consent agenda? Not seeing any hands raised. I will entertain a motion for consent.
So moved, Flagger. I'll second, Abikoga.
Great, thank you. Auden?
Mock? Yes.
Mock, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, I. Little Munoz.
Yes.
Little Munoz, I. Bybee.
Aye.
Bybee, I. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, I. Burt.
Yes.
Burt, I. Montano.
Yes.
Montano, I. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, I. Willia.
Aye.
Willia, I. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I. Flagger.
Yes.
Flagger, I. Abikoga.
Aye.
Abikoga, I. And is Becker present? Becker is
Yes.
still. Oh,
I'm
Becker.
here.
All right, with 15 ayes, the motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next is item 2, consideration of approval of the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. And we're not asking for the board to approve a budget tonight. All we're asking for is input. If you had an opportunity to review the budget, to get your input, so that we can create a final version. And Joanne, can you briefly go over the budget?
Yes, thank you, President Jones. First of all, the bylaws require that we have a budget that is presented to the cities in April. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. And the final budget, as President Jones mentioned, must be approved in June. Then the membership dues are sent out in July to all of the cities. The budget that is before you is a very bare bones budget. It does not include potential board initiatives, unforeseen obligations, significant inflation costs. It basically just is covering the expenses that we have. We do have a rebate to the roundtable cities, and we do have an outstanding invoice that we just received for $6,450 to Baird and Driscoll for the planning collaborative. In order to make this budget balance, and first of all, I should backtrack and say, if we continued spending the way we are doing, we would not have enough money halfway through next year. We will have about $20,000 at the end of this fiscal year, which will go over into next year so that I could balance a budget. And what I did was I kept the membership dues at the current level, and there is a attachment on the agenda. I reduced the executive director's salary to $90,000 plus employer taxes, which adds up to about $96,000. And I eliminated the bookkeeping service and the off-site storage unit that now exists. The income from the current budgets is $150,000. And the expenses right now that you are running are about $177,000 with cuts. So it's the extra $20,000 that will roll over to make it pretty much of a balanced budget. But one of the other bylaws says that you should have reserves, and there are no reserves. Reserves have been expended, and so that's something that you'll need to think about of how you want to start to build up reserves again. So as President Jones says, we need to have discussion and input. That's it.
Thank you, Joanne. So I don't see any hands raised. Please, if you haven't already reviewed the budget, please review it and provide me and Joanne your input and thoughts. Okay. And I don't see any hands raised. Oh, Councilmember Mott.
Thank you. The budget is very slim, and I'm wondering how what's going to happen in June of 2023 when we have a negative balance. So it does really concern me quite significantly that this group is running at such a very narrow balance in terms of cash flow. So I would suggest maybe enhancing some of the revenues in some fashion, in other words, raising fees. And then on top of that, we would also, and I haven't looked at each one of the budget items, but have some reductions as well. I don't know how this is done. So, but I do know that the balance sheet doesn't have enough money to sustain for a very long time. So something actually has to be done. I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you. Very good comments. Any other comments? Seeing none and seeing no members of the public who want to speak on this item, we're going to go to item number 5, presentation on local control item of interest. Board priority, and the topic is significant impact to cities from this week's HCD published guidelines on SB 9 And we're going to have a presentation from Councilmember Liz Gibbons from the city of Campbell.
Thank you all very much. I have submitted my comments in writing to Joanne so she can circulate it to you. I would strongly encourage you to read it. It has the link to the SB 9 fact sheet of new HCD guidelines. The main thing of concern is that the SB 9 fact sheet states that any housing development with no more than 2 primary units must be reviewed and permitted ministerially, meaning all single-family homes must only be approved ministerially. And it's the assessment that that is not the intention of SB 9. So I would encourage all of you to work with your staffs to understand the impact on any ordinances that you're preparing for SB 9, and hopefully work collaboratively with Cal Cities to sort through a reasonable correction of the HCD guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I don't see any hands raised or members of the public. So we'll go on to the next item, which is a discussion of the general membership meeting for May 12th. And we had that meeting scheduled, but we were informed that the League of California Cities Leader Summit is in Sacramento during that time. So there was a request because of that conflict and because several council members were going to be attending that summit in Sacramento, that we move the general membership meeting from the date of the 12th. We were looking at moving it out a week to the 19th. And I know that the city of Los Altos Hills has their council meeting that night, and I know they want to participate in the general membership meeting. So I'm going to propose that we move that meeting out to our June scheduled Cities Association meeting and have a regular Cities Association meeting in May. So that's my proposal, but I'm open to hearing any input, thoughts, and suggestions. And, Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jones. And as this year's president of the Peninsula Division of the League of California Cities, I want to thank you and Rania and the rest of your staff for being flexible on moving the date. And I think that's an excellent suggestion to move it out to June. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, suggestions? Is everybody just worn down? Okay, we're gonna get our second
Happy
win.
June 16th. June 16th.
Let's see. That would be June.
The 9th?
June
Would it be
9th?
June 9th? June 9th.
Yes, that's the second Thursday. All right. Any other questions? All right. And no hands raised by the public. So on to the next item, and that's a discussion direction for hybrid or virtual meetings. I want to get the board's input in terms of moving forward, particularly after hearing Dr. Cody speak, to get your thoughts on whether we should go to a hybrid format, be all in person, or just continue to meet on Zoom if we can. And Councilmember Becker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chappie Jones. So yeah, I think we should have, I don't come to this meeting often, but I'm going to speak on behalf of Santa Clara and I think a few other cities. I think a hybrid model would probably be more appropriate. And the reason why I say that is a lot of us, including myself, and I know some other council members out there, have full-time day jobs. So I think consideration for a hybrid model will work perfectly, especially for people who have to commute in between places. Considering also with the recent rise of cases, that is another concern I do have. Our city council ourselves are going to be going back to council chambers April 19th. But besides that, I think there is a possibility that a hybrid meeting model is going to probably either draw more attendance, and at the same time, it would be more, I think, for public members, it would also draw more attendance too, if that was the case. So I think, personally, a hybrid model would be more appropriate because it does add the flexibility for people who need to be flexible.
Thank you, council member. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Let's see. Mayor Wailea?
Thank you. I think in light of what Dr. Corey said, I would suggest we continue like this and revisit this later on. I don't believe there is anything we are losing in this format. We are able to function quite well. And I know this is a difficult situation. In-person meetings, there is a benefit of that, but this seems to work. That's what I would suggest.
Okay. Marini?
I think I'm seconding that because I'm a little worried that if we went to hybrid, that it might be you and Auden there alone kind of thing and everybody else calling in. So, I mean, if we went to a hybrid, I would at least see if people really want to come, because when you have to drive home later at night, and Sunnyvale can be a long ways for decent ways away for a lot of us, that I suspect a lot of people would not come in person. So I would make sure you're going to have some attendance before we bother to do hybrid.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also agree. We should stay on the Zoom platform, and also look at the bright side. We're not driving, and that lessens our carbon footprint. So I really like the Zoom meetings. It's very flexible. And I do agree with Rob Rennie that you might have one person there or two, and I just think this is a better way. It's more efficient.
Councilmember Robert Koga.
Thank you, President Jones. I originally was thinking of moving to hybrid, but I've actually been in a few meetings this week with MTC, and today was a MTC ABAG joint meeting for housing, and we haven't had too many of our commissioners at the facility. Granted, it's in San Francisco, and no members of the public showing up in person. And so I guess it did make me think that maybe folks may not be ready to come back in person, or I mean, this is frankly more convenient for a lot of us if we have to, go a distance. So I think we still have to work out the facilities issues. So I'm okay to maybe go in this virtual for maybe through the summer until our summer break, and then perhaps we can revisit it after break or during break, figure out the logistics and look at coming back a hybrid in the fall. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Becker.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that hybrid out there earlier just to see that it's an option, but I 100% agree with Councilmember Montano and Mr. Rennie that 100% I think virtual is the best option. So I'm for that too.
Thank you, Councilmember Leroy Munoz.
Thank you. And I'm surprisingly going to express a counter opinion as the person with the longest drive home. I mean, it usually takes me about 45, 50 minutes after leaving. I remember those days. Anyway, be that as it may, I mean, I personally get so much out of being in a room with all of you and colleagues, and just the opportunity to better get to know you, to expand on the discussion. I just think it's a more organic discussion and a more organic experience being there. So I'm all for a hybrid option, and what we talked about earlier, I'm going to stand by it, where I will work to, I'll be there. even though it's a long drive. So that's just my thing if we were to go hybrid.
Thank you for that. Actually, I totally agree with you. I think that, looking back at my experience on the Cities Association, a lot of those relationships and collaboration came from that, face-to-face communication, sitting next to someone during a meeting, those side conversations. And we're seeing that, at City Hall and, on our jobs, that, the magic really happens when you're in the room face-to-face and you have those interactions. I also understand the desire to, make things more convenient. And that's why I think the hybrid model is very attractive. If we can make it work, make the technology work, because then if you have a desire to, meet in person, you can do that. If you want to, attend the meeting over Zoom, you can do that as well. And if we try it a couple times and it's just me and Auden in the room, then, obviously we can change and adapt from there. So Vice Mayor Montano, you have your hand raised?
No, I forgot to lower it. Sorry about that.
And Mayor Elhey.
Thank you. Yeah, we are gluttons for punishment when we volunteer to serve as city council people, especially in cities that don't pay their council people anything except have citizens come up and tell us how great a job we're doing some of the time. So I think the idea of getting together personally and hybrids is worth trying. Let's see what happens. If it just totally flops, then it flops. But I think it'd be good to be able to see each other in person. And there is something about it. I think in a way Zoom has been successful because we already know, have seen each other personally a few times. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out people who've never seen each other personally and end up on Zoom day after day, what kind of relationship they build up. So I would suggest at least try it, see what happens.
Anyone, Mayor Rennie?
I would just add, I remember the days when Rania used to bring really good food, and that will get you everybody there.
Yes. I remember that too. All right, and I don't see any hands raised from the public on this item. So now we're going to go to item 8, Legislative Action Committee update.
I think you need a motion, don't you, on item 7? Because it was for direction.
That was just for, well, I guess I could entertain a motion if someone wants to give me direction.
It's up to you.
Councilmember Gibbons is.
I was just going to offer a comment from the public about your hybrid meetings and in person. Selection committee just made some substantive appointments for 2- and 4-year roles. And most of the people had never been met by the members of the selection committee. So the value of having opportunity to meet face-to-face, as member Leroy Munoz just said, is really, really important. So I would strongly encourage at least the hybrid approach.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion then if someone wants to make one on giving direction for a hybrid approach or whatever motion they want to make. Councilmember Becker.
Sure, I'll make a motion to propose a hybrid option for anybody who does want to show up can show up, and anybody who wants to be on Zoom could be on Zoom. So I think that's a fair approach.
All right, thank you. Mayor Paul?
Second.
Okay. And I'm glad you second that, Mayor Paul, because I know the perfect location to have a hybrid meeting.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as an invitation to comment, Chair. I'm still looking into that for Cupertino. We are going into our first hybrid meeting next Tuesday. And so I'll certainly let you and Joanne know on a follow-up as to the feasibility of our technical capabilities at that point.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Auden?
Believe. Oh, Councilmember Baker, the hand was from earlier. Okay. All right, I will now call the roll. Jones?
Aye.
Jones, aye. Klein?
Aye.
Constantine, I, Fliger.
Yes, but just a quick clarifying question, Chair, if I may. When would this go into effect?
We have to identify the location. So I really don't have an answer for you right now.
Great, thank you. Yes, Auden.
All right, Fliger, I, Bybee.
Aye.
Bybee, I, Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I, Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, I, Wilia.
Nay.
Wilia, nay. Becker.
Yes.
Becker, I, Abakoga.
Aye.
Abakoga, I, Paul.
Yes.
Paul, I, Laura Munoz.
Yes.
Laura Munoz, I, Bert.
Yes.
Bert, I, Montano.
I'm thinking about the high price of gasoline, so I'd say no.
Montano, nay. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I, Mock.
Yes.
Mock, I, with 3 ayes and 2 nays. The motion carries.
Yes, and just to clarify, we already had the vote, but just to clarify, the hybrid means that you don't have to be there in person if it doesn't meet your commute needs or, timing. You can attend it over Zoom. Anyway, now we're on to the Legislative Action Committee update. Councilmember Fliger.
Thank you, President Jones. The Legislative Action Committee met at 6 p.m. this evening, and we discussed and voted on 2 different bills, Assembly Bill 2164 and Assembly Member Alex Lee's other bill, AB 1944. And the committee had 2 recommendations to the full board. The first, as to AB 2164, is to fully support that bill. And as a reminder, especially for those who weren't part of that meeting, this bill would allow our small business community to use funds currently collected as part of the business license fee and permit renewal process by local jurisdictions. Our small business community could use these funds to ensure they're ADA compliant, and also to help with the defense related to the litigation that a lot of our business community have faced regarding access barriers. So that is AB 2164. And as to AB 1944, we brought this bill back to the Legislative Action Committee. We considered it at last month's meeting. And as a quick reminder, this is one of the many Brown Act modernization bills that Assemblymember Lee is proposing. And this would allow each jurisdiction to determine whether or not they would allow council members, if they were participating remotely, if they would not have to publish their private address. With regards to AB 1944, the recommendation coming out of the committee is to do a letter of support with a proposed amendment to require that if a jurisdiction does opt to do this, that they also build in a requirement that the council member or council members who are appearing remotely, that they still have to somehow disclose their location. There was a lot of concern about the quorum requirement within the jurisdiction, but also ensuring that as elected officials that we're in the community where we're elected to serve. And so those are the 2 recommendations coming out of the Legislative Action Committee. I'm here for questions if there are any, and I know staff from San Jose and also Assemblymember Lee's office are still here to answer any questions. If there are no questions, President Jones, it would be great to do maybe one motion for both bills. Thank you.
Okay, I will make that motion for both bills.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. I'm looking for hands. Okay, and I'm looking for hands from the public. I don't see any members of the public who want to comment on this. So Auden?
Okay, Mock,
Yes.
Mock, I, Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, I, Abakoga.
Aye.
Abakoga, I, Becker.
Aye.
Becker, I, Laro Munoz.
Abstain.
Laro Munoz, abstain. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, I, Bybee.
Aye.
Bybee, I, Julia.
Abstain.
Julia, abstain. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I, Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I, Fleiger.
Abstain.
Fleiger, abstain. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, I, Bert.
Abstain.
Bert, abstain. Montano.
Abstain.
Montano, abstain. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I, with 10 ayes and 5 abstentions. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Next item is item 9, City Selection Committee appointee update. And I just want to notify the board that for the ABAG representatives, we have 2 representatives who were appointed, Council members Lisa Fleiger and Council member Yvonne Martinez Beltrain. And then for the ABAG alternates, it was Council member Lucas Ramirez and Sergio Lopez. For the ABAG Regional Planning Committee, it was Hung Wei, Councilmember Hung Wei. And then for the Santa Clara County Emergency Operational Area Council, it was Councilmember Jonathan Weinberg. And for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, it was Councilmember Sergio Lopez. So that's the report. I don't see any hands raised from the public. Don't see any hands raised by the board. So we're on to the next item, which is the Santa Clara County City Managers Association update. And we have Sarah Zarate, who's going to make that presentation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The group met on March 9th and discussed a few items. First, they discussed COVID-19 updates, which included hybrid in-person council meetings and any related extensions of emergency declarations at the state. They generally felt that hybrid meetings should stay in order to continue and increase community participation. They also discussed the various masking changes at the county and city levels. There was a discussion, a lengthy discussion around an article by Mission Square Research Institute titled The Great Recession or The Great Resignation and COVID-19. Many of the cities are struggling with vacancies, though not all equally. They talked about what can be done to retain and recruit staff, including referral pays and sign-on bonuses. They also talked about the importance of taking a relational approach and building a sense of team with staff. Lastly, there were several reports and updates, which included from their Next Gen committee, a discussion around posting jobs and internships. And then lastly, there was a discussion about post-COVID challenges and the future of meetings. And that summarizes it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I don't see any hands raised or members of the public who want to comment. So next is item 11, the executive director update. Joanne?
Thank you very much. And I will be contacting all of you and your city staff, city managers about the change in the date for the general membership meeting being now in June. And also that we will have a regular board meeting in May. That is May 12th. So I just wanted to say maybe, will we do this on Zoom? We're doing this on Zoom, but will people be busy being up in Sacramento? And that's a question for Nisa. And then our insurance company, our former insurance company did drop us due to having a claim. And Chappie and I are now working on submitting applications to find a new insurance company. Our current insurance actually lapsed yesterday, and perhaps Gary has some more to input.
Just that I'm working with the president and the executive director to respond to the questions from the insurance companies. And we're doing our best to try and find an alternative insurance carrier. And I've even introduced my insurance broker to see if they can assist us. But so far, we're still working on it. Thank you.
And Vice Mayor, if I can respond to Joanne's question about the league schedule.
Yes.
On the 12th, the scheduled programs will end by 5 p.m. In the evening, there will be different social events. They're not mandatory. And so it really will depend on each council member whether or not they want to attend those different social events. But the actual scheduled program will end by 5 p.m. on Thursday.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Joanne?
That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. On to joys and challenges. Do any board members have any joys or challenges they want to share? How about the joy of this meeting being almost over? All right. Mayor
Sorry.
Burke, I see.
I should have raised my hand sooner on the last item. Do we really want to hold that meeting conflicting with the league?
That's a good question. It's really a question of, board members who go up to Sacramento will be done with the business portion. It's just, I guess, after hours is more the social portion that would be in conflict. So if there's I guess it really depends. What we can do is we could actually just try to get a head count on who's going and who would be able to attend or not. And if we can't get a good number of board members or we can't get a quorum, then we'll just cancel the meeting. Okay. All right. So again, joys, challenges. Well, if I don't hear any, then this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
All right.
Good night.